Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming on. Welcome to podcast number 8 officially with Broder Curry. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, brother. Well, yeah, first off, I want to get into it right away here.
Okay.
Who was Broder growing up? I want to talk about public school first. We'll start there.
Oh, what a question. The outgoing, obnoxious, goofy guy who always asked people how their day was going, cared a lot about others because, I don't know, I've always just enjoyed communication. I think that's been my biggest thing. Started in public school. Mm-hmm. That was me for sure.
Okay, cool. And what type of guy were you in terms of like friend groups? Like, do you have a good set of friends? Did you kind of jump around in different friend groups?
Great question. I guess to answer that, I'll give you another answer. So I moved around a lot as a kid.
Okay.
Great childhood, but part of that great childhood was I got to experience a little bit of everything all around North America. So I think the skill I learned early, to answer your question, was getting to know everyone, being sympathetic, and being a little bit of a chameleon.
Okay, cool.
So I was the sports kid and the nerd and the music kid and a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to friend groups, I think I had a little bit of everything, a little bit of everywhere.
So how many different public schools did you go to then, moving around?
Great question. So from kindergarten to grade 9, I never went to the same school 2 years in a row.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
my math's
crazy.
not very good. I think that's 9 or 10. But yeah. So moved around a bunch, but I wouldn't change it for a thing. I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me for sure.
Wow. So it was literally a new school every year?
Yep. Now some of them is cheating. I say that it sounds cooler. Some of them was obviously grade 8 to grade 9, same location, different school. In grade 6, it was middle school. I went to school in the States for a year, so that right. But I think it was 6 or 7 different locations, 9 or 10 different schools.
So you were kind of almost forced to be that guy, that charismatic guy who can go in and meet whoever and be friends with anybody.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I have a good story with that real quick. So when I was super young, my mom, love her to death. When I was maybe, let's say, call it 3 or 4, we would go to a park and she's like, hey, you got 10 minutes, okay? You go out there in the park with all those kids. If you like anyone, you want to stay, we'll stay. If not, we can go. So I learned from a super young age, like, find your vibe, find your people. If not, we'll go somewhere else and we'll figure it out.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So which parent was it that obviously had some type of a job, I'm assuming, that moved you around?
Yeah. Short answer, divorced parents.
Okay.
Dad moved to the States. So obviously visiting him, that's one location. And then grandparents lived here in London. I'm from Toronto. Mom remarried, dad remarried. So just 2 blended families. The life of an athlete, sports, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. My stepdad played hockey, so we travel with him.
Okay.
My dad moved around a lot for work. My mom was the best ever. So a little bit of everything, always on the move.
Okay, cool. And so when your parents split up, what age were you?
I was young. I think I was 3 or 4.
Okay.
The first time I went to visit my dad, I was 5. I flew on a plane from Toronto to California. 5 years old. They call it an unaccompanied minor, and I think I've been loving that motto ever since. You know, just the fly around the world, travel, learn something from everyone. Always be not afraid to have conversations and meet new people.
That's
I think,
sick.
like I said earlier, that is my greatest achievement as a kid, was getting to learn that skill at such a young age.
Okay, so you actually went to school in the States as well.
Yep. Yeah, so I can give you the locations.
Yeah.
So London, obviously here. Toronto, a few different spots in Toronto just because we got a new house or whatever. Bruce County, there's a couple spots called Walkerton, Kincardine that we lived for a year. Ohio for a year. Texas. 2 spots in California and Vancouver. That's the 9 right there.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Is there any major difference between Canadian public school and American?
Oh, dude, it's crazy. That's a funny story. So when I first went to school in the States, I would have been grade 6, I'll say.
Okay.
Or the 6th grade, as they call it.
Okay.
And I forget, I think it's the metric system. Whatever we use, Celsius, feet, whatever, meters. The month that I went there to start school, they were starting with that, the
metric
system.
system or whatever?
So everyone else is lost. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So right when I showed up, I was the smart Canadian kid, but it was just what I was used to.
That's jokes.
And then when they switched to American politics and all this stuff, I was lost.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, man, the States is a different breed when it comes to education for sure.
Yeah.
In a good way, I think, personally.
So you think the States is a little bit better potentially?
I personally do. That could be my bias because I was lucky to be in maybe some nice schools or nicer areas.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think they don't treat everyone. Yeah. I like it a lot better. For me personally, how I grew up and how I was raised. I think that way of teaching people, you have to learn through your mistakes a little bit.
Cool.
More like life and teaching kids about life.
100%.
I think that's what I went through. I loved it.
Okay, so at that time, like public school, who did you have to like look up to? Did you have anybody in particular that you were like looking up to more as like a role model at that point?
That's a great question. I think the rocks in my life have always been my grandfather on my mom's side. Mm-hmm. Scottish guy, sounds like this. He still sounds like he's from Scotland, Glasgow. At a very young age, quit drinking, focused on family, focused on his core principles, up early, up late, takes care of everyone before he takes care of himself.
Just I think that was a stud guy.
Just a stud. Just like a very traditional masculine man for sure.
Amazing.
Other people on the more feminine side, my mom for sure. And then people along the way, a couple coaches that really stood out in sports, a couple teammates as well, like even guys that were just my same age, but I just love the way they carried themselves. Okay. I would say those are kind of the role models for sure.
Cool. And so were you playing sports like hockey and that stuff in those public school years, those early years?
Oh, yeah. Sports have been a constant in my life. Sports are the constant in my life throughout my whole life for sure.
Okay, cool. So after grade 8, right, grade 9, you get into high school.
Yeah.
Where are you going to high school?
So grade 9 was the last moving year. Grade 10 is when I moved back to London.
Okay.
My mom's from here, grandparents, Scottish family that are from London.
Yeah.
Grandparents were getting sick, wanted to be with them. Mm-hmm. They're still alive, thank God, to this day. Mm-hmm. So that's why London's been the home base since grade 10 for me.
Okay, cool. And so you played football in high school?
Yep. So I played football grade 11 onwards, and I played hockey my whole life before that. The summer going into grade 11, I had a bad ankle injury, and just the way my skates were and the way the avulsion fracture was, I just couldn't skate the same anymore. So I just kind of had to give up the dream, and we'll talk about that too for sure. That's where business started. The itch for business came.
For sure.
And then football was there, man. I love the physicality of hockey, and I've got that lower body build.
Yep.
And I remember running out and working out in the summer with a buddy who played football, and he's like, hey, you should try out. Loved it, and it's been a passion ever since for sure.
That's fire. So during those high school years, how was it making friends? Because obviously that's kind of a like an odd age, right?
For sure.
To be able to go in there and meet all new people again. You know what I mean? So how was that experience for you?
It was actually, it wasn't easy. Meeting new people was never easy for sure. But I would say I had a little advantage for sure. My grandparents are from here, so I had some friends growing up along the way that I reconnected with. And then honestly, man, with high school, I think it's a big misconception. I think high school is the first place a young man can find his tribe, if I'm being honest. Because you get to pick what classes you want to go to. You get to pick who you hang out with. Don't pick the wrong friends. That's, you can go down the bad path. But I think I think it was easier for me because I fell into some good friend groups for sure.
For sure. And then how many sports did you play in high school? Like you played hockey, football?
Man, I always like to try everything. So in grade 9, I played hockey, soccer, basketball, and then I forget maybe like track. And then I went to a local school here and did football and basketball the first year. Okay. And then I played football every year, and I would try something new. So I tried badminton as a joke for 1 year because that was funny. I tried tennis. Just try something new.
Cool. Okay. And so out of high school, right? You finish high school up. Did you have any aspirations of like going to university, or where did you go after that?
Yeah, man. So I played football. I actually went back for grade 13 for football only. I had graduated. My grades have always been, something I'm proud of. And I had one offer, and I was like, you know what, maybe I can do this. And the biggest reason was just for the scholarship side. If I was going to move somewhere else, I wanted at least some tuition to be covered. So I came back, got a few offers in football, and then, a little fast forward, business was already starting to do well. And I decided to stay with business. Even though I came back for football, got the offers I wanted, I chose that route instead and stayed in London. Okay,
so grade 13 finishes up, and are you already a part of a business at this time?
Yep. So when was 2017, I would have been in grade 12. Yeah. So we started it when I was a senior in high school. Okay. Came back for just first semester of football, was still involved in the business.
And what business was that?
519 Clothing.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
a
cool.
local company. And
So how did that start up? Like what actually got you guys inspired to be able to just kind of start that thing up?
Yeah, man, I can't take credit. Hopefully Taylor Norris is watching this. Stud, one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. We were actually working together at the time at a local clothing store called Channer's.
Okay.
Like luxury clothes, suits, but they have everything from socks and underwear as well. They got a little bit of everything. And had an inclination I wanted to go to school for business. Mm-hmm. So the first question Taylor and I had was, how can we learn more about business? Hey, why don't we talk to the business owner we work for? Really started to pick the Channer's brains. Great local family. They're fantastic. And they kind of revealed the curtain of like what a business actually looks like. Not going to school for business to become an accountant but like what day-to-day operations look like, what profitability looks like, what making the right or wrong decision looks like. So I figured if I'm going to go to school for it, I might as well have some skin in the game. Mm-hmm. Joined Taylor with 519. Selling hoodies out of his mom's. Are we allowed to swear on this?
Oh yeah.
Selling hoodies out of his mom's fucking basement, packaging everything up, shelves stocked, like just the most like high school business ever. And obviously it's grown a lot since then. But
for sure,
I had the itch for business ever since that first sale, for sure.
So would you say that family, the Channer family, that was kind of like your first mentor, or at least first guy who you spoke with about business?
I think yeah. I guess that would be the answer. I've never really thought about it like that, but 100%.
Yeah, because I always find it interesting, right? Because it's like I really do believe you meet certain people at a certain time for a certain reason, and so it's like potentially, right? Maybe if you didn't work there and met him, right, you might potentially not be in the same place you are today, right? So it's like all those people that you meet, I find are just stepping stones, right, from where you are now.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I 100% agree. I think I met them at the right time for the right reason, and I guess I have a lot to thank to them for sure.
Huge. So you started this business up in grade 12, and you carried on for how many years? Like how many years are you a part of this business for?
I was involved for 3 years. It's still going to this day. They have a store. It's a fantastic business.
Yeah, Taylor's a great dude.
Fantastic. He's a stud for sure. Great morals, great mind, everything.
Mm-hmm. So you're in this business for 3 years. So what year is that? What year
2020 COVID.
Okay. So right before COVID, or are you in COVID?
I was right before COVID. Didn't even know COVID was going to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But like right before COVID.
Got it.
Yeah.
So right before COVID, you make the decision for yourself that you're gonna go to a different venture or a different path or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Cool. So from there, where do you go after that?
Yeah. So COVID hits. Quick funny story. So I was at the Western school there, and I was going to go to Ivy, a business school. And in second year at Western, in the business program, you write a final case study. You do a big feasibility project.
Okay.
And COVID hits. So it's usually this in-person final exam, but instead it was a take-home exam. And I remember sitting, it was COVID, it was lockdown. I was like 2 or 3 weeks in. And I get an email from my professor saying, here's the case study for the final exam. Now rewind a year earlier, they had written a case study on 519, the company.
Oh, no way.
But usually it takes like a year or two to like go
Process
whatever.
and all that shit, yeah.
My final exam, I just left 519, was on 519 clothing.
Wow.
So I wrote an exam about the
crazy.
company I was involved in. Super funny story. But to get back to it.
Did the professor know that you were involved with that? Obviously.
Yes.
Oh, he
yes.
did know?
Yeah, but because I wasn't
that's
involved
crazy.
anymore, I was allowed to write it.
Oh, that's
best grade
fucking
I've ever
crazy.
got.
Yeah, of course. That's crazy.
It was great.
So real quick, before we actually move on,
Sure.
anyone that's out there looking to actually start a clothing business, would you have any advice for that guy?
Oh, tons of advice. Make sure your why is right. A lot of people start a clothing brand because they like clothing or they want to make money. This is just us being personal here. The reason why I was so involved in it, we donated 10% of proceeds to mental health awareness. And that was our why for sure. That also is why I think it did well. Another why was it's called 519, the forest city, the tree was the one, the logo. So there's a lot behind it. And the reason why I think that's super important is, one, if you have a reason why you like the company and why you would buy it, the right people will buy it, right? And the second thing is, when it comes to clothing, when it comes to any product business, I think branding is the most important thing people don't realize.
For sure.
And it's a lot easier to brand when the right morals are behind it.
For sure.
If that makes sense.
For sure.
So make sure when you do start with why. Read that Simon Sinek book. That's what we did. Biggest piece of advice I give for a product business, at least.
For sure. Yeah, I don't know if you knew, but I actually started a clothing brand. That was my very first business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lift Kings, right? So obviously that didn't fucking go very well, but at that point,
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah,
did it go well, or did you learn from it?
No, I learned from it.
So then
sure.
It went well.
True.
Right. That's my biggest thing with business. And like everyone's idea, oh, I failed this business. No, you didn't. You just learned.
Yeah, true. No, that's a great point. And then, when I started that thing, I was definitely in the mindset of like, I need to get rich tomorrow.
Gotcha.
You know? And so I think that was a big reason. And if I maybe didn't start that business, I wouldn't have learned that lesson so early. Right. And like I said earlier, might not be here today because of that. Right. So I think everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. I love that.
So you get out of 519 Clothing.
Yep.
COVID hits. Probably a fucking shit show.
Oh yeah, dude. You want to talk about a young man just like, what do I do next? So sidebar, I've always wanted to work in hockey and get into hockey. That summer, I guess COVID was what? I think it was like February or March. It was
March or something.
Early in the spring, whatever.
Yeah.
That summer I was going to, and I had an internship lined up to work in hockey, to go down that path, to start and, get ahead in that world. COVID hits, there's no sports. And I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? So I'd already been in the entrepreneurship side. I figured I should probably stay in it. I'd done a product business. I had the idea I really want to do a service business. And I remember the day I thought that, the day I wrote it down, big journal guy, affirmations, I saw an ad for a franchise in the trade space. A mutual friend of ours, Justin Georgopoulos, was also joining at the same time. It was the perfect harmony of everything. So we joined at the same time, and that's what came next. And I called it 519 Windows. It was like a franchisee for home maintenance was the next business.
That's sweet. Yeah, and so how many years did you run that for?
2 years. The first year, we set the all-time franchise record for rookies. We had, I think we had 13 employees in the first year. And then in the second year, we set the all-time veteran record. Over like 900, 1,000 operators have tried. No one's beat it. Super proud about that. The team, I still talk to a lot of those guys today.
That's fire.
Yeah, man. That was great.
What type of hard work does that take to actually beat a record like that? Because I'm sure it's not an easy record to break if you're talking about thousands of people, literally.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. I would say the most important work that I did was something I call compound interest. Now, I don't mean the financial term, but I mean like the hours put in to build for the future return. So my thing is, I think compound return shouldn't be a financial term. It should be a team building term. The hours you put in to find the right people, the hours you put in to train those people, that's compound interest. They'll pay better dividends than any stock in the world. So that's what I did. In my second year, 65% of revenue I didn't sell.
Wow.
I had a team who did that. In terms of production, I didn't have to go to a job site once in the second year. Once. Wow. Unless it was to say hi to the guys or, hey, ask why you have a ladder in a pool. But that's another story.
What's the story behind that?
Ladder in a pool. So I sold it. Yeah, this is a funny story, actually. I sold a job, and I remember I'd taken the team out for a team party on a Saturday. I had a quote early on Sunday. The client asked, 10 o'clock on Saturday, hey, would you mind coming an hour earlier? I'm with the guys. I'm like, oh, man. And I'm in college. I'm young, having fun, of course. So I had to show up, I think it was 7 or 8 in the morning on a Sunday, which now is fine, but back then it was like, oh my goodness. I quoted a job and missed the blatant pool that was covered, and there's a 3rd-story window, 3 of them, and there's only way to get up there is to put the ladder in the pool. And I just brain fart. Fast forward 3 months, we're producing the job. I got a call from my production manager. Hey, did you quote this job? It was, okay, everything's good, but you're going to love our team meeting tomorrow. And I see a video, and it's 4 guys standing on the bottom of the ladder while one of my employees is 40 feet in the air cleaning a window. So just some of the things that you do to get the work done.
Of course.
Back then. But yeah, funny story.
Of course, yeah. So when you're doing this window cleaning business, how is that business? Because I know there's kind of like a thing around that where it's just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like I think it's probably pretty... how do you say that? I guess infiltrated almost by so many people, overflowing amount of people that want to do window cleaning, right? It's kind of like a first business, but what's like the reality behind that? Like, cause it's probably pretty damn hard.
It is hard.
You know?
The way it's taught and the stereotype behind it is totally true. If that's your first business, I think I was lucky enough to run a business prior, understand how to build a team, understand how to attack business from different angles. So yes, we did a window cleaning business, but we offered a lot more higher end, like more profitable services too.
Yep.
So it was more a full scope.
Okay.
And to answer your first question, what's it like? It's a frequency game.
Yeah.
We did, I think, 2,000 projects
Wow.
in a summer.
Wow.
It's a lot of homeowners. It's a lot of problems. It's
That
a lot
scheduling
of.
must be fucked.
It's a nightmare for scheduling. But again, because I knew I was in the frequency game and I was proactive instead of being reactive while I was in it, building out the proper team prior, being as close as we possibly could in terms of communication at all times. To be honest, it was a lot easier, not easier, it was a lot less challenging than it probably should have been because I think, not taking credit, I think our team took it from the angle of we know it's a frequency game, let's play the fucking game.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And how many, so you said you had, what did you say, 13
We
employees?
had 13 employees in the first year. In the second year, we were up to, including like even part-time people, we were up to 35, I'll say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had how many guys in the field were actually working at one time?
We had
must have a
we had
shitload of
5
people.
crews at one point.
Wow.
Anywhere up to like 10 to 20 guys doing the work. But that includes project managers, some people who wouldn't be on the tools all day. We had a lot of door-to-door reps. We had a lot of sales guys. We had a lot of stuff behind the scenes marketing. And again, like if I would have had that, this is not regret, but this is thinking back on things. If I would have had that same team and we were doing a higher ticket offer, I think we would have done 10 million. I'm not even joking.
Wow.
Just the team that we had and how dedicated they all were and how like bought in everyone was. I was so proud of that team.
Yeah,
it
that's
was
fucking
great.
awesome, dude.
Yeah, man.
And I'm a huge advocate. Like, you talk to anyone on my team, like, I love team building. I love culture. I think it's probably one of the most, if not the most important thing about a business in general.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say on that? Like, if you could just speak on culture for a quick 2 minutes, what does that actually mean to you? What does
Yeah.
that mean to you?
I think culture is everything. 2 answers to that. First, I played sports growing up, so that's all I knew. I think is just the idea of team. There is no I in team, that whole mindset. So then when it came to building a business, I thought, okay, I have 168 hours in the week. If I'm doing this alone and I'm working my butt off, I can only do 168 hours worth of X. If I bring in more people, we multiply hours. That's the analytical mind thinking. And then I go, wait a second. What if I just run it like a sports team? And I'm not the captain, maybe I'm the coach, maybe that's the right, and you have different relationships, and then maybe eventually I'm the GM who builds the team, you hire the coach to coach the team, you find your captain. It's like, oh my gosh, you can just treat this like sports. The second thing, I'll never forget this, I don't have it prepared, but I can do the analogy. When I was younger playing hockey, I had a coach, and I'll never forget this. He came in one time, we lost the last game 8-1. Instead of being like kicking the garbage and whatever, we had just lost the game. He comes in and he's got one pencil in one hand and he's got this like rubber band of like 40 pencils in another. And he asks our captain, who's like the hardest working guy I met, he goes, come up here. I want you to break that pencil. He's like, what? Goes, come up here. I want you to snap that pencil in half. Comes up and he snaps it. Easy, right? And then he might have been like an average build guy. We had this one guy on our team who was a mutant. We might have been 14. He looked like a grown man with a mortgage. Big guy, right? Just big motherfucker. He goes, now, Andy, I want you to come up here, break this. And he's like, he's putting elbow grease into it. He's trying to break these 40 pencils, right? And he's like, I can't, coach. He goes, good. So when you fuckers start playing like there's 40 of you and you're not playing alone, we'll win a fucking game. And he just walked out.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that.
That's powerful.
The next game we won 14-0. Hockey. It's a football score.
Yeah.
So just, I don't know.
crazy.
That's always stuck with me.
No, that's a great coach.
One line, simple metaphor, and just left. And we didn't see him until our next game when we dominated.
Wow.
So that's always been the idea of team. It's like you build a team full of A players. You got 40 pencils. We are unfucking breakable.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Dude, that's a great coach.
Yeah.
Just no emotion, just right to the point.
Yeah. And like,
Wow.
I think the simpler the metaphor and the more you let quiet do the talking, right? When it comes to metaphors, you just sit in silence and you're like,
Yeah.
holy shit, that's so true.
Well, in that case, the silence is louder than anything else.
Yeah, man.
Big
When it
time.
was silent, we were like,
Yeah.
and it worked. And it worked.
Wow. What a great coach, man.
Yeah, man.
So in that time, right? So I feel like I always like trying to figure out like who people are looking up to, where they're getting inspired from, right? So I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but that time that you were in 519, right? Maybe that the guy from Channers, that probably was one of the main guys to actually push you to
100%.
get there. So who is that guy when you're in the window cleaning business? Who do you look
I'm
who
looking
are
up
you
to?
looking up to? Who's inspiring you?
That's a great question. It's not as much a guy. Actually, I guess it is a guy, but I'll give you a longer answer. So divorced family, live with my mom's side. So to be a little vulnerable as a guy, you're trying to figure out what is my definition of becoming a man. What the heck is that? Running a business will put some fucking hair in your chest for sure. Having other people rely on you for their paychecks and for training and stuff.
100%.
But the biggest thing I learned at a young age was there's these things called books out there written by these people called, actors, business owners. They're like, oh shit, that's what I would like to do one day. Those are the people that I'd like to at least become. So I remember right when COVID hit, I told myself I'm going to read a memoir a week. Or to be quite honest, I would listen to it. I loved audiobooks. And I liked when the author was reading them. And the reason why is because I just felt like I had, for the whole year I did 52, I had 52 different mentors.
Wow.
And the coming of age story started to, I don't know, reveal itself to me in that every man, I only read male audio memoirs.
For sure.
Every man goes through the same thing. They think they're the shit. At whatever field it is, you get knocked off the horse, you got to go through the mud, and then you get celebrated eventually. It's the same hero story. Every movie you like, every person, everyone who's successful has the exact same story.
For sure.
And so COVID hit, and at the time it was this internship that I missed out on, and it was this business. That same cycle has since repeated itself for me with a couple other things we can talk about. But I recognized earlier on that, one, you got to have a lot of mentors, as in steal from people. They're giving you free advice. Two, that hero's journey is something that every guy goes through. If you can recognize that earlier, you're better off for it.
100%.
Yeah, man.
And that's crazy that you say that too, because I've been saying that the whole time. Like during COVID, I went into like my own shell. Like I just didn't talk to anybody, kept to myself. And honestly, like most days, 16 hours a day, probably 15, 16 hours a day, I had podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, educational YouTube videos. And that's actually, I totally agree with you. I can definitely relate to you with that, because it's like, that was the same thing that I felt. I was like, I got 10 mentors and they're in my ear all day long. I might be able to talk to them, but they're talking to me all day.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were in a dark place, or you were in a whatever, right? Looking back, not do you think that helped you, but how do you think that helped you?
Good question. I would say, number one, I honestly do believe that every man in his life at one point in time needs to be isolated to figure out who he is. Who are you, And you gotta be honest with yourself. And that will give you your starting point. And until you find your starting point, truly, it's going to be really tough to figure out how to move from there. So I took that into an account of, that is where I isolated myself fully, right? I was actually probably in the best mental shape of my life after COVID.
Nice.
Because that helped me, number one, with knowledge, obviously, with listening to all that, but not only the knowledge, it was the mental toughness aspect of it, of just staying a disciplined individual. And that's where I really kind of learned discipline and what it was and how it worked. And like using these terms like momentum, the difference between motivation and discipline, what's better, when do you need what? And so that is really where I learned mental toughness and what it really meant. Andy Frisella has been a huge mentor for me, my whole life pretty much. I would say number one, to answer your question directly, the whole mental toughness aspect of it, that's where I really learned what being mentally tough is. All these definitions that people throw out there all the time, discipline, motivation, like momentum, all these things. And that's where I really understood my psychology of my brain, how I should be thinking. And that's really what shaped me. Like that, there's no way in hell I'd be where I am today without that, right? I just think isolation by yourself as a man is one of the most important things that you can do. Because I really do believe that's almost the only way to find out your starting point, is when you're just alone, honest with yourself, and maybe it doesn't have to be 2 years, right? But take 3 months, shut off your phone, right? And just figure out who you are and what you want to become.
I like that. Yeah. I have a mentally tough, every time I hear that phrase, I have a thing I think you'll resonate with. So mentally tough is and should be a habit. And here's why I say that. because we're on the business field. So being a business owner, your normal is irregular. So you have to be mentally tough in the fact that your new normal has to be you being comfortable in irregular situations. In stress, you have to be even keeled. I think the point where you were at, and I was at that point too, is anytime something remotely stressful would come up, COVID was stressful. Mm-hmm. As a human, we're designed to protect ourselves. As soon as your brain sees this stress, I'm going to stay away from it. And now, as a business owner, you're talking about being mentally tough. Mm-hmm. Anytime stressful I guess things that you would have thought were stressful back then are now just your new normal.
Yeah, 100%.
And I want to ask you the question now, when what would have made old Tyler comfortable comes up, a Sunday where you just get to do nothing, sit and listen to podcasts, or you can eat whatever you want for a day. When those comfortable situations come up, don't you now feel a little off, like you're doing something wrong?
Oh, I'm anxiety to the max.
So all that you've done is made your old definition of being mentally tough just your new normal.
100%.
And I like that. That's just rewiring your brain. You know, it's like watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your future.
Yeah.
It's like I've just reversed that sentence to go, well, no, my actions are my words because my words are my thoughts because I think what I feel. Anyways, you are just mentally tough now. That is your main standard. And I fuck with that. I think those are the people I'd love to spend more time with.
100%. And I think even, like, to be truthfully honest, I really learned how to handle and deal with stress, both physical and mental, in the Army.
Let's talk about that, man. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that for me was a huge turning point in terms of actually dealing with that level of stress, because it's not like I went to combat or anything, but when I'm 17 years old hanging around these 40-year-old, 30-year-old guys, and these guys have lived twice as much life as me.
Yeah.
And they've already learned how to deal with this. I'm just figuring it out as I go, you know? And so I had to learn very, very quickly, because now you have potentially 10, 15, 30 guys relying on you to be able to handle that type of stress. And so that is where I really learned how to handle that shit, for sure. And then when I came back, I was obviously in a little bit of a party mode. Like, the Army is kind of like a intense frat, realistically. And so that's when, once COVID hit, I got out of the Army in I would have been 19 or 20. So I would have been, what year is that? 2019, 2020. So I had a couple of years of honestly just fucking around. And then COVID hit. I already knew how to handle the stress. I was very emotionless, honestly, after that, because you don't have a choice, man. You really don't. Like, you don't have a choice to be emotional. It's not an option, right? Like, you constantly have to be in that logical brain to be able to make these decisions and be able to push yourself through this tough shit, right? So that's really where I learned to handle stress big time.
Okay, I like that. Now I have a question for you. I'm a big fan of Chris Williamson. You know Chris Williamson?
Yeah.
So he talks a lot about this thing called the region beta paradox. Have you heard about that?
I have. I honestly don't know too much.
Quick synopsis. So there's this region that a lot of individuals fall in. And when I say a lot, it's like, it's a resounding amount. And it's your circumstance isn't bad enough for you to leave it. So you're staying in it, which makes it worse. For example, you mentioned prior to COVID, prior to whatever, you were, I'm not going to assume for you, but I'm saying for me now, I felt a little comfortably numb. So if things got worse, I would have probably left said circumstance, which would have been better for me because it would have forced me to do more. So the circumstance is, you're in that relationship and you guys like each other, but the intimacy isn't great. And you guys don't do many things together. So it's like, if she cheated on you, you'd leave, which would be better for you because you could find someone better. So question for you is, when in life have you found yourself in the region beta paradox? And now looking back, how did you get out, or how would you have gotten out if you could change something? Loaded question.
Yeah. I would say honestly, I could look back and say before I even went into the Army, before I signed up, because I would have been grade 10. I was partying like a fucking animal. I was actually in a relationship like that, right? Where I just was comfortable enough, like you said, right? It wasn't bad enough to leave, but if I left, it would have been better. So I was kind of in a relationship like that. Before I left for the Army, I was partying a lot, just doing stupid shit, right? What high school kids do. And so I got rid of that girlfriend. And when I went to the Army, that's what really fucking, like, that was like, yeah, literally, that was like a light switch. It was like, hello, you know, welcome to your new life.
Cool.
And the thing that I really like about the Army, though, and I talk about this a lot, but I think it's very important, is a lot of people go through life and they never find their true limits, right? They never push themselves to their actual limits, because for you to push yourself to your limit is a insane amount of discipline. I truly believe the only person that I've seen in a long time to actually push themselves to their own absolute max limits is probably David Goggins.
Yeah, man, we could talk about it too. I just saw him and Andy Elliott in Arizona. That guy's a different breed.
For sure. And so when I was in the Army, I was shown my limits. I didn't have a choice. I was going to find them, right? And these instructors were going to show you.
But so that's not you pushing yourself to your limit. That's someone else pushing you there.
No, right? And so, yeah, correct. Sorry.
I like that.
And so when you have, now that also, it doesn't have to be the Army. It could be a mentor. It could be a trainer in the gym. It could be a coach, right? But I really believe that if you can have somebody in your life, no matter who it is, who is willing to spend time with you and show you what your true limits are, like, that is a very, very, very important individual in your life. No matter how much you think that this guy's a fucking asshole, this guy's a dick, why the fuck's he making me wake up at 5? Why we got to do these fucking suicides at football practice? Why the fuck is this guy coming in and yelling at me? Right? Because life is all about perspective. And looking back on it, I didn't see it that way. I was like, dude, fuck, man, this fucking sucks, you know? And I remember very, very vividly that first week of my DP1. So I was out in Gagetown, New Brunswick at that base. And I remember that first week, we got fucking beasted every single day. Yeah. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, runs, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, runs. No learning, just getting fucked up physically. And obviously with that amount,
mental side too that comes.
Exactly, right? With that amount of physical stress, your mental is also there.
Yeah.
And so I remember in my bunk, literally by myself, being like, dude, just like looking up, I'm like, fuck, bro, I don't know if I can do this. You know? And I remember that very vividly, you know? And I made a decision right there and then that I don't want to say like prepared to fucking die or anything, but I was prepared to go through the suffering, and I didn't really give a fuck what it took. Because I honestly I didn't want to disappoint my family. I didn't want to disappoint my regiment, right? Because it's kind of like, I don't know what it would be similar to. Maybe like the All-Star NHL thing, where it's like you don't want to disappoint your team. You're away from your team. You're playing on a different team, and you don't want to disappoint those guys. You want to represent for those guys.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the same thing with your regiment, right? Where it's like, okay, this guy's from this regiment. Oh, that regiment must be fucking weak.
Gotcha.
You know? And so I had a lot of people that in my life at that point that I just didn't want to fucking disappoint. I didn't want to come home and say I couldn't do it. Right? And so I made a decision right there and then on that cot that I was going to fucking do anything that it took to get out of there alive and fucking come out on top.
Nice. Now, I noticed you said a lot about you didn't want to disappoint anyone else. Was there any sense of that sounds like selflessness. What about selfishness? Like, I don't want to disappoint myself and my own expectations. Was that ever there?
I think so, but more towards the end of that course specifically, because at that point, obviously you're really fucking good buddies, like if not brothers with all the guys there, because you're eating together, training together, sleeping together, fucking 14 weeks.
Yeah,
you know?
everything.
So later on, it was like I had to like say that to myself in my head, right? Because let's just say rucking, right? You got a big ass pack on, 80 pounds. Maybe the instructors tell you to throw on your gas mask. It's 45 degrees out. You got to carry 2 80-pound water jerrys for no fucking reason, just because they want you to. And so when you're in that situation, when like, I don't know if you ever put on a gas mask or anything like that, but it fucking sucks, especially in 45 degrees. You can barely breathe. You have 80 pounds on your back. You have fucking 60 to 80 pounds in each hand. And you're just telling yourself, you're like, I am not going to fucking drop these. There's no fucking way. I can't, you know? And that is a different level of fucking mindset, in my opinion.
I like that. I played high-level sports growing up. My stepdad played professional hockey, so I guess I was definitely worked out hard. My dad's he's in the police force, so I might have like a sliver of what you were put through, but I can't imagine that level for sure.
Yeah, and it was fucking fun looking back on it, but while you're there, it is different. It is different for sure.
Would you consider those the good old days? Do you ever think about it like that?
Not really, because I'm still that guy.
Good.
I'm still the same dude.
Okay, that's why I asked
You know?
it, because I think a lot of people, the good old days, good old days. Well, it's like if you learned and you gained habits from things you enjoyed back then, you still have them, then it's not the good old days because you still have those same core competencies now.
For sure. And I think that, like me personally, I honestly do believe like everyone should go to the Army from 18 to 20. If you're a young man, like realistically, I'm going to say most people from 18 to 20 years old, you're fucking around. You're really not doing too much, right? Maybe we know some people that took life a little bit differently, but I think we live in a much better society if the majority, if not everybody, went just for 2 years, 18 to 20. Maybe you don't have to see combat, but go through that training, right? Go to basic land, go to DP1, DP2, DP3, right? And do all these courses, and you will come out 10 times better, guaranteed.
This is a good rabbit hole to go down, because I respectfully disagree. And here's why I say that is because I think you need a large portion of your society to do that. Let's say if it's men. But in order to form a society that is all-encompassing, you also need some people who are more soft in nature to take on maybe responsibilities that entitle that. Here's my reason why I say that. I went to business school, but at the time I was also running a business. And I realized that business school, when I think of that, it's because you're going to want to run a business one day, right? That's my mindset.
You would think, 100%.
But what I started to realize as I was more and more and more in these classes and in these teachings is, wait, you're just teaching everyone in here how to be an employee. And then I remember thinking, okay, if I were to run my own business and I were to hire someone who I wanted to work in accounting, I would hire someone who went to school for accounting. That's what they did. That's what they're good at. Same goes for any profession. If I ran a hospital, I want to hire a doctor and a nurse and right? So now to bring it full circle, I personally think everyone who's going to run a business, run a job, let's say maybe when it, like firefighters, one that comes to mind, anything that's going to put you in a role or in something that's going to test your limits, I 100% they should be in the Army from 18 to 20. I 100% think that. But if you had a society where everyone pushed their limits, I think it'd be an interesting society. One that I'm sure I'd like to be a part of, but I think it'd be interesting. Thoughts?
I think that, now here's the thing, right? I think that everyone, if you're male between 18 and 20, you should go to the Army. That doesn't mean everybody actually gets through it.
Gotcha. Okay.
You need to be showing your limits. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Gotcha.
The strong survive in the Army, right? That's always how it's been, no matter what army you come from. Strong survive. And so you need to be showing your limits, because we live in a society now that can't show you your limits. There's no more, the next tribe over is going to come in on horseback tonight and could ambush us.
Gotcha.
So everyone's got to be on their shit.
Yeah.
That's gone. That's gone, at least in the Western society. And so people need to be shown their limits, and people need to be shown what they're capable of, because I think that tells society a lot about you, but you're also going to have the opportunity to now see that and choose if you want to get better or not. Right? And I believe in, and I'm sure you do too, I believe in competition. I love competition.
That's
right?
literally my core, for sure.
And so I think that if everyone were to go through the Army, number one, I think everyone would respect everyone a lot more, because you have the same training, you went through the same shit, right? So I can respect you because I know what I went through and you went through that same thing.
Gotcha. I like that. The empathy is there because we all went through the mud together.
Exactly. I think it would really, really help, really help society, because I still believe that it's still standard, like the same standard should apply. And I really, truly don't believe if we were to rally up all the men in Canada right now from age 18 to 30, I don't think 50% would get through.
I don't think 15% would get through.
Yeah, and so that's where it's like people need to be shown their limits, because society's just not doing that anymore, right? It's not necessarily about making everybody a fucking killer and a stud, right? Because that's just not going to happen. Like me and you both know we see too many people that are just no chance, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that you should have the opportunity to go into a place and be shown what your limits are. You know?
Like that.
Because we live in a society that can't do that.
Let me bring it full circle.
For sure.
So when it comes to business, you're a competitive guy, I'm a competitive guy. I personally feel that is my leg up in business because I'm willing to go the extra mile from every perspective, not even just like the physical side, the mental side, but also the customer satisfaction side.
For sure.
I'll spend an extra 10 hours to find that employee because I know whatever. If all your competitors in the construction space went through that, don't you think it'd be a little harder to run a successful business? Because your competition would be willing to go so now, think about that in a grand scheme of things. Recognize maybe that because you and I would consider ourselves very competitive guys, that is our advantage, so we got to take advantage of it.
For sure.
Now, question. You're competitive. This is a very niche question. When it comes to hiring for your team, is that the number one characteristic you're looking for? Or what is that one differentiator?
It's a good question.
The reason why I asked is because the word competitive is mine.
Okay. Yeah, I would say competitive is a very good attribute for somebody, but I honestly don't know what my number one would be because I literally told myself before I started this business, over and above all everything, culture is what's most important to me. The culture of my team, right? Like as far as I know, we're the only team in all of London that runs the Mike Murphy Challenge every month, regardless, right? And so that culture, that standard of like, hey, we are going to be competitive, right? Because I don't actually mind hiring somebody that's not competitive and that's not like that, but I need to see something else in them, right? And I need to be able to know that this guy is willing to get to my level or willing to get to the level that we require.
Okay.
Right? Because I've had a couple guys that come in and from face value, they don't really seem like they might fucking last a month, right? And now some of these are fucking young studs who are out here just doing crazy shit, right? And I really believe that, man, honestly, I just think back to when I was before everything, who I was, you know, and my potential and how far I've came. And if I can see that in somebody else, I'm willing to put in the time and effort. Because that right there will probably be one of the most loyal fucking team members ever. Because you put your time into that guy, right? You taught him everything that you can. And that is what gets somebody bought in. I don't really think it's of course it's the vision, the goal, all that stuff's important. But as a leader, if you can give everything back to your team, like you were saying, right? Compound interest. If you can give everything back to your team, that is so fucking important for culture. You know?
Question about that, because what I found in business is obviously it's different for every individual on your team. Have you had any circumstances where you challenge someone in your business, whatever that phrase means to you, and they were better for it and they knew it and they thanked you?
Define challenge. What do you mean?
So,
by
for
challenge?
example, I had an individual in business who I knew their drinking habits were not resulting in it doesn't affect me, I don't care. But I knew it wasn't aligning with what they told me their goals were for themselves. So it has nothing to do with the business, because in all regard, I never saw a correlation between that issue and a downfall in the business. But he told me what his goals were, so I challenged him to his own goals that he made. At the time, he didn't like it at all. And now I've talked to him this day, says thank you for it. So that's what I mean by challenge.
I would say yes, but I do that for everybody in my life, you know? Like, I do that for everybody, where if you tell me something, like just today, right? My ops manager, Jay, he's like, I got to start eating more clean. I gotta cut out the shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. This guy's just like, honestly, like freak DNA. Like this guy can eat like gummy bears all day long and be shredded.
Got it. Okay.
Know? But nonetheless, he wants to just eat better, eat clean, right? And so I told him, I was like, all right, if you want me to hold you to that, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do, right? There's lots of other team members, right, that you could go to, probably most of them. and be like, yeah, I told Tyler that I wanted to do this. And then when I didn't do it, he fucking challenged me, right? He told me, said, yo, what the fuck, right? So I do that quite often because I don't want to be a dick. It's because I want to make you better. I want to see you perform better, not just for the business, but for you personally. You know, like I think that's another quality of being a good leader is actually seeing the potential in your people. Right. And so I think that that's very, very important is to challenge and make sure that people are holding up to what they told you they were going to do. I
like that. The sense of integrity and accountability is huge in any aspect of life.
For sure.
But I think in business is huge.
No, 100%, dude. 100%.
I have an interesting thing I wanted to talk about. I like talking about this with a lot of guys.
Okay.
So you seem very driven. I know you are very driven. What is the reasoning for it? And short question, why?
I think drive is really deprived from, or derived, sorry. I think it's derived from your why. I think if you have a good reason. Honestly, man, I want to take care of everybody in my life. Everybody.
Okay, I like that.
That's truly my why. You know, I want to make sure that I can take care of my mom, right? I want to take care of my siblings. I want to take care of, you know what I mean, my wife, my future kids, and all this stuff, right? And I'm a huge giver. I like giving, right? I don't expect anything in return any day, right? I like doing it. I find joy in that, right? And so I would say that's my why is because I want to take care of everybody. Right, everybody in my life that has supported me and been there for me and is up late nights with me. Right, a lot of my team members are here up late nights with me. Those people deserve to be rewarded. Right, they're helping build this empire that we're building now. But why am I so driven? Because what else am I going to do? If I'm not training, eating, sleeping, or working, like nothing else is more important than those 4 things.
Fair.
You know what I mean? Going to church, but
say those again for me. What were the 4?
I would say, well, I guess there's 5. Okay. There's 5. I would say eating, sleeping, working, training, or going to church. What else do you do in your life?
So I like how you said that. Do you mind if I add something? So
shoot.
I have 4 things, and I had this recently. Get another memoir. I forget which one it was, but I wrote these down, and I've had a lot of conversation with guys in the business space, and if I could give any, it's not even advice, but it's something I've learned that other guys tend to resonate with. There's 4 things every man needs to be successful. And if you just focus on those 4 things, you are successful. And the first one is purpose, which is usually, as a man who's growing towards something, is usually focused on career or, you know, building your empire. So that's your purpose. The second one is health, which is also all encompassing mental, physical, etc. Seems like you're doing that. The third one is love, which can be in the form of intimate love partners, children, but also just love between your work, love between your business partners, love between your employee, whatever, love. And the last one is faith. Whatever faith is to you, you need faith in yourself, faith in God, if that's you, whatever. And then the reason why those 4 pillars are so important is if something happens in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year that does not affect one of those 4 things, it is dirt off your shoulder. And I never really believed that until I started to write out what those 4 things are to me and read them. And then when stresses come up during the day, you're like, this doesn't affect my purpose at all. Like, I'm fine. This doesn't affect my health whatsoever. I'm fine.
I love that.
And you start to choose what you're not changing, you're choosing. It's a big one too I've thought about lately. So unhealthy food, for example. It's a very specific one. But I think my health is I'd like to be at this % of health for this amount of time, my whole life. That choice, does it affect one of my 4 pillars? Absolutely. So I should make the right choice. So I think those are super important. And you said 5, which all 5 of those fall under those 4 pillars. That's why I knew I fucked with you. I resonate with you because you have the same morals, the same North Star for sure.
So I have a question for you. What do you think it takes for someone to change, or to start choosing rather a better thing for them?
It's a great question. That comes back to the region beta paradox, I think. The initial first step is always the hardest. People don't recognize in order to be an expert at anything, you have to be a beginner, right? Like
big time.
Anything in life. You want to get better at the gym, guess what? By going to gym once, you don't get better or you don't become who you want to be, right? I think the sooner people realize that it's not about the destination, it actually is about the process. That's the most like fucking cliche sentence ever, but like really it's the truth. If you want to fall in love with an end goal, write out what the process looks like to get there and then fall in love with that. If you want to be like someone, ask them what to do every day, fall in love with that. So I think that's the biggest thing with change is, we talked about this before the cameras were rolling, people don't realize how much it actually takes to get to where you think you want to go.
For sure.
There's a saying about your problems. If everyone's like, oh, my problems are so much, right? There's the idea of somber, and it's that everyone in this room, everyone in life has a life as complex or more complex than you. Everyone who walks by, you see them for a half second, but they've got their own problems, all this stuff. If we were to all throw our problems in the middle of this big figurative pile, you would run back to the table and take your own back, right?
For sure.
So that idea of change is, we don't want to experience the unknown. And I think when we can fall in love with the idea of change, in that it's a new process, I'm going to become a beginner to become an expert. If you can fall in love with that, I personally think that's where the most growth comes from. The most success comes from, in my eyes. Because that's my idea of success, is growing, is learning more, is becoming a better and bigger version of myself.
And I always say too that, honestly, most of the time, the gym is like the very first thing for most people to get on the right path.
I agree.
You know, it's just going to the gym. What age did you start going? Like, what age did you start training?
My mom's a personal trainer.
Oh, shit.
So,
okay.
like, fucking, let's go, mom. Like, you know, as soon as I can remember, we've definitely been in a athletic family. But here's what I'll say, though, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with this in their own way. When I moved out first, and I went from the household there was always healthy food in the fridge. If I wanted to eat, it was good food. Thank God my mom's the best ever, right? For raising her boys like that, to be young men and to learn what that is like, to learn how to take care of yourself, right? But when I left, I was, that rebellious phase. Like, I can eat, I can go to McDonald's whenever the fuck I want. This Big Mac, I've never had a fucking Big Mac before. It tastes great. So now looking back, I realize that. But to answer your question, I've been in that since childhood.
Forever.
Yeah, man. And I'm the oldest brother too, so that's another aspect of it is, I think one of my reasons why I'm so competitive is if I slack, it's a bad example for my younger brothers.
Big time.
So health, all that stuff also encompasses that.
Big time. Yeah, and I always do that as well, right? Obviously for your brothers and everything, but I always say, like, how do you actually want to be remembered when you're dead? Like, who do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
What do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
And if you can live your life like that, with that being or at least one of your main goals of, like, who do I want to be remembered for? How do I want to be remembered? What type of people are at my funeral? I think that's a very fucking great start, right? To being, if you can write out, I want to be this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Okay, well, now let's figure out how to do that, right? Yeah. And then, like you were saying, what's the process in that, and actually loving that process to become that dude.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I think that's something that not a lot of people really look at, is from an outside perspective in a business, right? Like, I remember this when I've, like, just started, right? And I'm looking at Gio's business.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, holy fuck. Like, million, like, we're talking about $1 million, like, with an M, and I'm like, holy shit, right? But from the outside, you think this business is perfectly pieced together, no problems, no issues, everything's running smooth, it's an absolute fucking Porsche engine machine.
For sure.
But when you actually start it yourself and you get into it and you start talking, you start meeting these business owners more. Like, dude, anytime that I'm in the room with business owners, what happened today?
Yeah.
Anything?
Absolutely, man.
And it's always this happened, this is how I got to fix it. What's your opinion on this? How do you feel about that? How would you fix this problem? And I think that when you have that group of guys, because I remember praying for that one day.
Really?
Yes. I remember getting out of the Army. I would say I never any point in my life was I ever considered, like, depressed. Like, I was never fucking just in a slump. But after getting out of the Army, like, you developed some insane relationships with these guys, right? And it was kind of like a year after, maybe a year and a half after, and I remember just praying for it, and I'm like, God, man, just if you could just get me a group of guys, that would be so fucking awesome,
That's cool. Do you feel like you found that?
For sure.
Cool.
For sure, right? And I just think it keeps getting better every year, right? You meet some new guys, they give you some info. But yeah, like obviously, like sitting here with you, Justin, Jackson, Amar, all these guys are great dudes, right? And that's like the group that I think I was praying for at that time, because I had almost nobody that I looked up to in a way other than maybe my dad. And it was like, you know what I mean? And at that age, you're like, whatever, 18, 19, you're like, fuck, like my dad, like,
of course.
And it's like, okay, I want some guys that I want to look up to. And I remember, lying in my bed and literally praying for that and being like, please, I need this group, you know what I mean? To get myself out of this slump, because I knew that I was just made for so much more than what I was doing.
It's cool.
Right?
I like that. There's a saying along the lines of like, you're living what you used to pray for. So that's a perfect example, obviously. But it's just if everything's rooted in gratitude, and also recognizing I know there's things that you're praying for now that you wish for in the future.
For sure.
I believe that's intuition. I believe like those things are going to happen. You're the right kind of guy to stay along that path. Let's say you're wishing for something by the time you hit 30. Well, when you're 30, you're going to have the same oh man, I prayed for that. Fuck, I did it. Let me ask you this, because this is my thing I'm praying for. I'm not a dad yet that I know of, thank God. But I know it's the one thing I want to be. Talk to me about what that future maybe looks like for you, and if that's important, why is it important?
In terms of like a family?
Yeah. You seem like someone who's doing it for that reason, if I'm correct.
For sure, yeah, for sure. And that's something that I've always said is like, I want, like, look, I had a fantastic upbringing, right? I truly believe that. Like, I was very fortunate, never wondered where a meal was coming from, always had a roof over my head, always had clean water, always played sports. So I had what I consider to be a very good upbringing. And so I remember Andy Frisella talks about this a lot, right? Where it's like, when you're born into like money, not that I was born in any type of money by any means, but when you are born into money, you really have two choices, right? One, you stay stagnant, you might become a piece of shit dude, you know what I mean? Drugs, alcohol, all these addictions, because you see no value in it, right?
In working hard?
Yeah.
Got it.
Because it's already there.
Sure.
Why would you work hard when, you know what I mean? You're the Prince of Dubai,
For sure.
So, or option two is you take what you were given and you multiply it. And so that's where, for me, I look at that in my life as, okay, I need to provide my children, you know what I mean, my future wife with a better lifestyle than what I had. And to me, that's going to be pretty difficult, And that's where I really resonate with that in terms of family, is like, I want to provide my kids with a great, you know what I mean, great childhood, just like I had. Because I had a good understanding from when I was young that, like, my dad was out fucking hustling, like he's a chef, he worked as a chef, and he was gone a lot, he was gone a lot. Like, we'd see him weekends, sometimes just Sunday, sometimes not at all. But I had a good understanding from a young age that, okay, this is how this dynamic works, right? Dad goes out, fucking busts his balls for the family. Mom was home. My mom's amazing, right? She actually gave up her previous job to start a daycare to be able to be with us all the time. So, and that for me was like, I really understood what a family was going to look like from a young age, right? Okay, dad's gone, mom's here, taking care of me. Okay, I see dad once a week, and so I think for me, that was very important for me to see like that, because I know, I honestly, like, to each their own. I just don't think that the father is, the father is as needed as the mother is at that young age, right? Because in my opinion, the father should be out working, grinding, right? And the mother is the most important one to be in the children's life at that age, right? Now, the other side of it is, I also just want to create a little mini me, a little mini warrior.
That's every dude, dude. That's 100%, man.
Like, I already know, like, I hope, pray to God that I have a firstborn son, and that motherfucker's going to be tough as nails,
For sure. So here's my question then following that. You've been put through circumstances in life to become what I would assume is tough. You sound like a tough guy. You act like I'm not a tough guy, but like I know you, business challenges, everything. What are you willing to put your kid through to make sure that they're tough?
Anything.
Okay. Talk to me about what that looks like. Because that is the biggest parable that I'm not on the fence about, but I think about a lot. Is okay, I feel like I've been through the mud. What, I don't know. You talk about mini-me. You talk about having a little fucking junior out there. It's like,
do you know what my mentality is when it comes to suffering?
No.
Is that I know what I can handle. I'm going to go back to it real quick, but the Army taught me a lot of shit. A lot, right? And just obviously through business, I'm nowhere where I want to become yet, but that is something that I know that I'm a man that can take suffering. I know that I can suffer through anything. I know that I have the mental discipline and the mental fortitude to be able to get through anything that I want. Doesn't matter how hard it is, how painful it is. I know I can do it. You know, I'm full conviction upon that. So I would like to think that if my son has the same blood as me, right? He has the ability, not necessarily that he will, but he has the ability to endure more or the same amount of pain as his father, as me.
Got it.
And so I think, and that's a tough question, man, because I look back at,
that's why I think about it so much.
yeah, I look back at my life, and my dad taught me a lot, but subtly. It was like subtle lessons along the way, right? There was never really like major lessons, you know, like, and I actually don't know what it was, but even if you ask like my brothers, my sister, like my dad was just respected. I actually don't know to this day. I don't know what it was.
By the family, or you say others?
By the family, by others, right? He's been a leader his whole life, led at his business, teams, always culture building. After this pod, I'll show you some stuff in the other room it's really sick, but he's always been a leader, natural leader.
Okay.
And so we always had this thing as kids, right? It was this. That's the count to 3.
Got it.
Right? And I don't think he probably ever got to 1, ever. Because I honestly, I couldn't even tell you what it was, but he was just respected. It was just known. Like, you know, like I remember when I was young, it was like, that was the punishment, was telling dad. Mom was going to tell dad. And you're like, holy fuck, you know? And I really think, and to me personally, I always struggled with English. I still struggle with English. I don't know how to spell at all, right? And so my dad would make me stay inside and fucking learn it to pass these fucking stupid spelling bees that I couldn't even pass today, you know? But all those little things, it's very subtle lessons, you know, that slowly built up and built up and built up and probably made me into the man I am today. And I would like to say, like, the glamorous answer to that question would be like, oh, fuck, my kid's going to play fucking AAA this, AAA that. I'm going to make him run every day. I'm going to make him do this. He's going to do 100 push-ups when he wakes up. But that's just not the reality of I don't think what would happen. I think teaching a lesson when the lesson needs to be taught and when it comes up, right? Because I think that you learn more lessons by burning yourself than you do if someone just tells you, right? And I think that's a skill in itself, is to be able to not have made a certain mistake, be told about the mistake previously, and still be able to swerve around it. Because you don't know the stove's hot until you get burned, right? You can be told all day long, don't touch that, don't touch that, don't touch that, right? But you won't truly know until you do it yourself.
Someone told me this, and I'm probably gonna fuck this up, but it was something along the lines of, you know why they call it learning? It's like because is it learn? Yeah. It's called learning because you earn something through a loss in your life. Learn, loss and earn. So I always like that idea of like, in order to learn, you need to fuck up. It's not a failure. A failure is when you quit or you don't learn the lesson.
100%.
That's also a mistake. A lesson is when you fuck up and you are better for it.
And that's what I've always said too. You only lose when you quit.
Yeah. So I like that. Let's pause it now because I fucking love that one. But the reason why I asked the first question about the son, because here's the flip side. What about your daughter?
That's a tough one.
right?
That's a tough
I would
one.
consider us both to be relatively masculine men, run a business, enjoy health, fitness,
Yeah.
you know? Bro, what the fuck are you going to do when that little angel pops out?
I know.
That's a challenge. I'm not even a daddy. I don't have a wife, but it just things to look forward to, but also challenges to look forward to. And
like, I truly, number one, I'm going to say this right off the hop. My son is going to go through hell compared to what my daughter's going to go through.
I would agree with the same thing.
You know? And that's a really hard question because I think that we're obviously living life through the masculine lens,
For sure.
you know? And so I don't know what it's like to fucking be a girl, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And neither do you. And so you almost have to, I don't even know. Like, I think it's very important.
It's challenging.
It is.
It's like, how the fuck do I be a dad? Let's say you have a daughter first. Fuck.
Yeah. I don't know. But all I do know is that she's not going to be dating anyone unless he can kill me.
This is the
tell
first
you
time.
that.
This is the first time since we've started talking that I've seen you like not have an answer right away.
Yeah, dude, that's a hard question, man. You know what I mean? I kind of want to flip the roles here. So what about, like, have you ever thought, like, your son, if you have a son?
The reason why I ask any question in life is because I don't think I have the answer. If I think I have the answer to a question, personally, I don't ask it. That's just me, at least. If I want your opinion on something, I'm always going to ask because I am unsure about my opinion or I'm curious. So the reason why I ask that is because, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do if or when I have a daughter. But I think that's the side, because the reason why I ask it is I've talked to a lot of guys about being a father, my own parents, but also I want to hear mentors that are in the business space that maybe would be living a life similar to what I would like for myself. And they always say the same thing. One, your whole life changes when you have your first kid because you realize what you're actually doing it for. It's like, holy shit. There's a family that chose me and now there's a family that I choose. It's a different gravy. And then the other thing is the whole having a child of the opposite sex. I think personally, if you have a daughter for us, that's when you become the most connected with your partner, your wife. Because you now have to be not vulnerable. You're already vulnerable. You have children, you have your family. But you really have to understand what it's like to live in her shoes, to also understand what it's like to live in your daughter's shoes, to understand what is required of you. I think you're more of a protector, though, when you have a daughter than when you have a son. I think that's going to be a big thing.
I do believe, though, like obviously, I'm sure you've probably heard the saying of, like, a daughter typically, you know what I mean, dates or marries a man similar to her father.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, to my daughter, I really do believe the best thing. Number one, I think her mother is going to be a well-rounded and good guide for her, right? As to what it looks like to be a woman.
Yeah. Because you can't do that.
Exactly.
We can't do that.
Right? But what I can do is become the best man that I possibly can to show her what it looks like that a man is. What does a man do?
I like that.
What is the role model? What is the standard that I'm setting for men to eventually one day enter her life, right? Other than myself.
So how'd you say that? I'm going to be the best man I possibly can be to set the standard for her.
Exactly.
I like that.
Right? Because I think that I think that that's probably one of the most critical things and one of the most important things as a man is to show what it looks like to be a man, you know? And what does that actually mean? What does that entail?
Can I ask that question then?
For sure, yeah.
What is your answer to that question? You said I want to do X, Y, and Z to show her what a man looks like. What is X, Y, and Z to you?
I think number one is career driven. I really do believe creation.
Purpose.
Right? Purpose. I think that is legitimately number one.
Okay.
Because I think a man with no purpose is chaotic.
I completely
Emotional.
agree.
Right? And when you have that purpose in your life, there's a lot of things that just actually naturally come with that, right? You become driven. When you actually truly have a purpose, you become driven, you become disciplined towards that thing, right? You start to get away from the wrong things. So I think purpose, number one. I think number two is, of course, physical appearance,
Health.
right?
Like
Health, exactly.
Okay.
What it actually looks like, you know what I mean? To what does a man look like, right? What does a really, really good man look like, right? And I think that is obviously in shape, taking care of mind, body, spirit, right? I think that I really do want my kids to be God fearing. You know, I think that's very, very important as well. So definitely church, right? Going to church. And I think a man, in my opinion, I think a man that is God fearing, if you truly fear God with the utmost respect, you're gonna make 10 times better decisions with your life, knowing, you know what I mean? So I think there's that. But yeah, realistically, I think those are really the main things.
I like it. The reason why I asked that question is because that's another core competency why I have those 4 things: purpose, health. The other 2 that I would have said, and you already said them in different ways, is love. I think the biggest thing you can do for your daughter is to love her mother. I think that's the biggest thing because yes, that's important for your son as well. But I think personally, the first 2 things show your son how to be a man is purpose, health. I think your daughter needs to see you love her mother, because that shows you how a man should treat a woman. Fair. And that's what you mentioned what she'll be looking for. And then the last one I have is faith. I just think faith is the core competency to be the leader of the household, in my personal opinion.
So I want to ask your opinion on this.
Yep.
Okay. So when you say show your daughter how to love her mother, what does that entail?
I personally think, so in my eyes, what that would look like is I have a wife and I have children. So I think that intimately, that's obviously the only woman I would ever look at or ever, right? That's the only woman other than my mother that I would take care of. And by take care of, that means protect and provide. I think those are the 2 most important things any man can do. Protect also doesn't just mean be the bodyguard to the house. It means protect her femininity, allow her to be a woman.
For sure.
If she wants to work, she can. If she doesn't want to work, she doesn't have to. That's protecting a woman's femininity. I personally, that's my definition of it.
I agree with that.
Protect and provide. Provide, I think, in our day and age, is less about financial. I think the old school, a woman doesn't have to work. Man, I'm a big believer. We got to change society. It can change. I think, though, if I were building my idea of a family, I think protecting physically and spiritually and emotionally, I think it's huge. And then providing financially, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I think that's what it is. My definition of love, though, as well, is I personally think if you're going to marry someone, you should be as enamored with them the day you meet as you are when you have grandkids and she's old and saggy and so are you. That's just my definition of love. I think I'm lucky to see and again, this comes full circle. That's what I saw when I was younger. And I'm not in a relationship or married yet because I haven't found that. And I think when I find that, then that's what I think, to answer your question. I think that's huge.
Okay, this is gonna be a little bit of a deep question here.
I love it.
So how do you, this is something that I've actually honestly thought to myself and I don't want to say struggled with, but definitely debated in my head, right? Is like, how do you actually, if you've never experienced love, how do you actually know what it is?
That's a good question. I do think I have experienced love.
Okay.
I've been in a long-term relationship and I do think I've experienced love. I've also experienced love from my parents, and that's unconditional love. That's a whole different ballgame.
For sure.
I think are we talking just like partner? Like,
yep.
Okay. So here's what I have learned from other men who are married happily with kids and from my own circumstance. The only way you can love a woman unconditionally is when you have children together. My personal opinion. Because no matter what, okay, maybe not no matter what, because some people have children that they don't plan for. But I'm saying you plan to have kids. If you plan to have children with someone, you love that person enough to raise your children whether or not you're alive or not. Because at the end of the day, you don't know if she's going to be alive or if you're going to be alive tomorrow, if you're going to be together or separated. So that's what I think unconditional love looks like.
That's a great point.
I think that's number one, is the day you meet someone who you not only think could raise some pretty damn good kids, but who you trust to have kids together with, because that's mutual. At the end of the day, woman is the decider if you're going to have children or not.
For sure.
Right? So if she trusts you enough to do what a man needs to do and you trust her enough to do what a woman's going to do, that is my definition of love. And then on the intimate side, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think the reason why I struggle with it, like you said you struggle with it, is we live in a society where the eyes are the provider of love when it should be every other sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great.
I
Say that again.
I just thought about that right now. That was great.
That was great.
The eyes in our society, the eyes are the provider of love, how someone looks, how they look online, their perception versus like perspective, right?
Wow.
But in all actuality, instead of like if you had your eyes closed and your partner was across from you, what are her morals? How does she talk? How does she make you believe in yourself? How does she, I'm not like, maybe not how does she smell or how does she taste? Like that's a little different, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the biggest thing.
Close your eyes and what's left.
Because at the end of the day, when you're not around, or if you're not around, if something, God forbid, happens to you, you can't see, but you can trust that she's going to take care of things.
I know this is I don't know, kind of intense, but I always think a little bit like the girl that I marry, I would want to be proud of her just like I would be proud of my daughter. You know? And I know
like
that's
that.
a little bit of an interesting take, but if the
In
woman,
what sense, if you don't mind me asking?
every way,
Cool.
the morals, right, the self-respect, the femininity, the woman that because ultimately your daughter is going to be just like her, right? So what the woman that you decide to marry, you better be okay with her being a daughter, right? Because that's what's going to be walking around. Just like I'm going to have a mini me, she's going to have a mini her, you know? And so you have to take that into account, in my opinion, of like, if this was, I know this sounds a little fried, but
That's okay.
if this woman was your daughter,
Got it.
right? Would you be
I see what you're
proud?
saying.
It's a little bit of a different take.
No, I'm thinking on it. I like that. My thing is this too. You mentioned, and this is kind of coming back to what you said earlier about the lessons you learned and what your normal was growing up and how you want to create that. But what you also told me is that you want to provide more for your kids than that was provided for you. You said that's going to be a challenge.
For sure.
But that challenge is change. So in order to do that, you probably can't give your kids everything that was given to you. You might have to give less or give more for a certain reason. So I'll ask you the same thing, because a big thing for me is your partner's family. Because at the end of the day, you only have half the responsibility and your parents only have a quarter of, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How much do you think, how much of, we're talking about our future wives here, okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Love you, honey. If you're fucking watching this, right? How much of that individual is what their normal is, what they grew up on, or is the idea of what you're going to build together? You know what I'm saying? Because you could say you want to provide what you grew up with and you want to grow on that. Guess what? She's going to say the same thing. So now it's okay, what does reality look like for the family that I'm building? So I'll ask you that question.
Yeah. Interesting.
How do you, what's your take on that?
I think that's probably number one. I really do believe, like, if you have the same morals and
Let's get
you
specific.
both-
What are some of those morals? Like, give me specifics.
I would say number one would be trustworthy,
Okay.
right? I would say number one is self-respect, right? Are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah.
Number two, I would say feminine for a woman in specific. And maintaining that, right? That's a whole other different
Can
thing.
I give you a hot take?
For sure.
I think that's actually your job. And I think it's the flip. So I think again, this is a hot take.
For sure. Yeah, yeah.
I think in order for a woman to be feminine,
Yeah.
you have to be masculine. And there's also scenarios where it's going to call for the flip side. But I think in our society, I think people think, guys our age think, I want a girl who's feminine. Well, then you better be fucking taking care of the other stuff that she shouldn't be taking care of if you want her to be comfortable in that.
For sure.
And the same is said for women. If you want a man who's masculine and provide for you, then you also are required to take on some, right? Like,
And I definitely agree with that. I guess maybe I might have said that wrong, but she has to come to you feminine.
got it,
Because
got it,
what-
got it. I see what you're saying.
What that shows me is that her father is masculine.
Got it.
Because that's her role model. That's who's taking care of her. And I know that if this woman comes to me feminine, I completely agree with you. It's now my job to maintain that.
For sure.
But she needs to come to me that way, because now that will show me, okay, her father is clearly masculine in some type of way, right? Which means that now she's used to how I'm going to be. Because there is some girls out there, right, that don't want you working more than 40 hours a week, want you at the home all the time. They want your time, right? They want this, they want that. And so to me, I truly understand that, you know what I mean? Women like to spend time and they like to, you know what I mean, feel loved and all this stuff. But at the same time, for me to do the whole other half of my job, that requires time. My purpose, if I don't have my purpose, if I'm not working towards my purpose, which requires a lot of time, I am not going to be the man needed to keep her feminine. Right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I guess going back to that, I guess I worded that wrong, right? She has to enter the relationship.
I understand what you're saying now. I think a big thing too, and this is why I don't like it's not politics, but it's just the society we live in now. It's people have conversations to argue, not to just be heard or understand the people's opinions.
For sure.
Because you and I probably agree on what we just talked about. There's people who might listen or people out there who might disagree.
Yep.
At the end of the day, though, we're talking about what we look for, and there's a certain population of women who might also agree that's what they would like from a man. So that's all we're talking about.
For sure.
There's also women out there who don't want that and wouldn't look for us in a relationship. But guess what?
100%.
There's also men out there who are looking for that, and you guys will be fucking great together.
For sure.
So here's a cool parable about that. It's not about men and women, but it's about morals and what you want in life.
Okay.
So there's a fisherman and a banker, okay? And the fisherman, what his day-to-day looks like is, you know, he lives a relaxing life. He gets to sit on the dock and fish. He goes, you know, home at 4:30 and has a nice glass of wine with his wife. They go out for dinner and they watch the stars and they talk about life and they just relax. And then he meets a banker out when he's out at wife one night with his out for dinner with his wife the one night. And the banker goes, you know what you could be doing? You know, if you spend an extra hour a day on the dock, and even if you find other guys to come help you on the dock, you could be catching twice as much fish. You could, you know, go for nicer dinners with your wife and you could do more and you could actually double and you could. And then the fisherman asks him, and like, for what? He goes, oh, so like you can grow and you can build a business and you can, you know, have the family of your dreams. And then eventually, you know, you can relax and you can retire. And eventually you can, you know, when your kids are old enough and you provide for them and you've raised them, then eventually you can, you know, fish all day. And eventually you can take your wife out for a nice dinner at 4:00. And eventually you can do that. So the fisherman and the banker realize quickly that one is living the life he wants to right now. The other is working his ass off to earn it to live it later. Right? So moral wise, the idea of living now for later, living now for now, anything. We just talked about relationships. We talked about work. How does that resonate with you? Because I feel like you and I are both someone who are living now for now, but we're also living now to be as great as we think we can. You talk about legacy.
Yeah, I think that actually goes back to loving the process, loving what you do to get to where you want to be, right? Like I might not be where I want to be in terms of my end goal, but I'm right where I need to be right now. And I love where I am right now because I know that me sitting here, putting in the work, late nights, all this stuff, which I love, is going to exponentially improve my life to get me a little bit closer to where I want to be. So I think it's a matter of taking a little bit from the fisherman, but also a little bit from the banker, you know, and understanding that parable in a way where you can do both if you decide to change your perspective and see it that way. Right?
Yep.
I don't think that a lot of people would see it like that, right? I don't think a lot of people would see that I can actually be like the fisherman while also doing what the banker's doing.
I like that.
Right?
A lot, and that's why I asked that, because like I said earlier, a lot of people think it's this or that. People are having conversation to argue, not to be heard. And there is a third option in every A or B. I like that. Let me ask you about this, kind of off topic, but I wanted to ask you about it. There's a phrase, you know, they wrote me off. I just haven't written back yet. right? Which is the idea of haters and doubters and all that stuff. Sometimes that comes from self, sometimes that comes from people you used to know, whatever. What's your thoughts on doubters or what other people think of you or anything like that?
I think in the beginning, most people change because of the external circumstances, because the external voices. I think the external voices actually play a big part in the beginning, in the very beginning of whatever journey you're trying to go on. Because that most of the time is what will push you to at least start. Right? Maybe you got someone saying, "Nah, you can't do that. There's no way." And that might be your thing to be able to get you on that track. But I think while you're in the process, while you're getting to where you want to go, there's a fine line between completely disregarding what other people say, because some of it might be good, right? I know that we're talking about haters, but just external voices in general.
Yeah.
Right? Some of it might be good and some of it might be bad. Right? And I can't remember, I think it was actually Amar who shared this with me, but he said, so I might butcher this a little bit, but he said the definition of intelligence is having two opposing beliefs, but understanding when the right time to utilize one over the other is. And so I think that's one of those cases where you need to understand when it's time to listen to the external voices and when it's time to shut them out. I think that you need to be able to listen to what people are saying, because oftentimes there will be some I guess validity in what they're saying, right? There will be some valid points, which you can take and learn from. But if you decide to take that and see that as hate, you might never grow, right? So you have to understand that, hey, maybe this guy's actually right? Maybe when he says all my thumbnails are fucking shit, okay, well, maybe that guy's right. Maybe let me dive deeper into this, right? But you also have to have the emotional intelligence not to get hit. Because when you let those people get at you emotionally, right, that will send you into a different mode, right? Where I really have learned over the last, 4, 5, 6 years how to almost become emotionless when needed, right? So I think that using that definition of intelligence, you have to know when to listen and when to shut it out.
I like that. And from what I've heard you say, it's more important to listen to them to force you to start something.
Yes.
To push yourself to think you have to reach your potential. When you're on the journey to do it, the only voice you should be listening to is, one, your own, and two, the other voice is, there's a phrase of like, I think it might have even been like a basketball player. I forget who said this, but he's like, hey, if we have a problem, text me about it. And if you don't have my number, we don't have a problem.
That's fire.
Right? So that's what I mean along the way. It's like, I trust the people around me. If you ever caught me doing something off guard, I would trust you'd call me out for it. Just like I would trust friends. Someone who when I started my business journey called me out, what? I don't hear anything.
Yeah.
I think that's that mindset.
But a very basic example like that I can relate to in my life is like growing up, I was completely out of shape, overweight for sure. And so as a kid, I got pushed around for it. I got bullied for it, right? And looking back at it now, obviously as a young kid, grade 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't really have the perspective to understand that, maybe I should listen to what they're saying and look in the mirror and decide on whether or not that's true. Because the only person, this is the thing, people can talk all they want, but you decide what's true and what's not anybody else. You yourself get to decide what you choose to believe and what you choose to disregard. And how you sort through those people is how you're either going to learn from that experience and get better, or become an emotional roller coaster from that experience and crumble, right? So that's what I would say in that regard.
Sounds like what I'm hearing at least was you had to go through some things as a kid to really recognize, or at least like you said, to look back and recognize why you learned those lessons. Would you say that's accurate?
100%. Yeah. I feel like when you're talking in terms of external voices, especially when you're a kid, I feel like it's extremely hard to decipher what's true and what's not. But I know that looking back on it, it was actually for the better. Because potentially if I never heard those words, or if I was never pushed around for my weight or anything like that, I could be a totally different dude, right? I truly believe everything happens for a reason. Good. So
I think I got a great question for right now. Pick an age from 5 to 15. Pick one, just whatever it is.
I don't know, 14.
Okay, 14. So if I was 14-year-old you right now, you had 30 seconds. It can be advice or it can be whatever you want. What would you tell 14-year-old you right now in 30 seconds or less?
I would say never ever doubt what you always knew you could do. Never ever for a second believe that you're not who you say you are. But also have the intuition to be able to see the proof in the past, to be able to reinforce that belief. And I would also say, no matter what happens, keep your fucking head up.
I like that.
And that's what I would say.
Can I ask you a more metaphorical question?
For sure.
Put yourself in the shoes of who you know you're going to be at 35. If you're now you at 35 and I'm you right now, what would you at 35 tell yourself right now?
That's a more intense question. I always knew you could fucking do it, number one. I would say fuck, that's hard. That's hard to think.
Can I give you my mindset on it?
Sure.
The answer should be the same thing. And here's why. I mean, we talked off camera a little bit about McConaughey's book, and we can get back into that. But I'm a big McConaughey fan. I think he's just our generation's fucking poet. So the beautiful poetry and something he said when he won his first Oscar, the biggest award as an actor can get. You've been the best in your profession for a year. He says you need something to look up to, something to look forward to, and something to chase. Okay, so he says something to look up to is, I think he says his role model, which I believe was his father or a couple men. Something to look forward to was his family. I would look forward to going home and spending time with them. And then he says something to someone to chase. He goes, I realized when I was 15 who I was chasing was, he goes, A, B, and C. He lays it all out. But he goes, I realized when I hit 20, that was just what I wanted to be at 20. And then he goes, well, when I hit 20, who I was chasing was me at 25. And then when I was 25, I was chasing. So the reason why I ask it like that is you're 25-ish. You're asking for at 15, so 10 years. And then I asked you what. So the idea of his principle, and the reason I asked that is because you're never going to be your hero. You're never going to be you at 35. Because when you, Tyler, the man, turn 35, you've 10 years of lessons of learning, of love, experience that you've gone through. And now the person that you're chasing is you at 45. So I was going
to say, I think an easy way to conceptualize that is just simply a pump in the gym.
It's a great way to look at it.
Is you're never going to be that big.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
You never be that big.
Yeah. But you need something to chase, and that's what, to bring things full circle, we talked about earlier, that's why falling in love with the process, not the outcome, is so important.
For sure. For sure. That's a super crazy question, honestly.
I love that.
You know? That's intense, because I find for myself is, you know what I mean, simple scales, fancy fails, right? Everyone has probably heard that saying. And like, I like how you said it should be the same advice, because that's the same advice that got you to here. You know? So if you keep following that should, in theory, you know what I mean, be the same advice that you want to follow throughout life. So that's interesting. I
love it. I'll ask you this then too. We talked earlier, and you liked the phrase that I came up with about the idea of what you trust in is, you know, your senses, whatever, with your eyes closed.
Yep.
And that's what you want in a relationship with others. What about a relationship with yourself? How is your relationship with yourself right now, and how do you think that's grown over the years?
I think my relationship with myself right now is probably the best that it's ever been, honestly. And that's in every single way, shape, or form, right? Mentally, physically, and spiritually. I feel like definitely after my dad passed in December, I got a lot more spiritual, noticeably. Yeah, I think to other people as well as myself. Physically, that pushed me to be harder on myself, right? Because my dad was always that guy that I feel like I could go to. And there's lots of conversations that no one knows about that I've called my dad and been like, yo, what do you think about this? You know? And I think mentally, I've also, like, now that I'm saying it out loud, I do believe everything happens for a reason, but I feel like the death of my father was something that I don't want to say needed to happen to push me to be better, but at the same time it did. Because that's when I really felt after this pod, I'm going to show you that speech that I said, because
Please.
in that moment in time, that's exactly what I was feeling to the highest degree. Right? Where I need to now I don't have an option. Before, maybe it was an option. I could be a role model if I wanted to be a role model. I don't have a choice. I do not have a choice, right? And I've had a business with a team for probably about 2 years now, right? With having multiple people involved. And I've always tried to be a role model for them, but when someone like your father who you want to look up to in different ways, like, I truly believe, and especially after going through some of the awards that he has, like, dude, this guy has boxes and boxes and boxes of leadership awards, team building awards, culture awards, and all these different awards, you know what I mean, came from him over his entire life. And so now that at that moment in time, I knew that it was my time to take that torch, and I didn't have a choice. That's how it goes. Right? Like, the way that I like to think about it is 500 years ago, if your father gets killed at war, well, now you gotta take care of your mother, your sisters, your brothers, and now you're that guy.
Can I add one thing to that list?
For
Your
sure.
last name.
100%.
I think that's a big thing as men too, like that, right?
For sure.
What does that mean to you?
That's a deep question. I think it means everything. I think my dad, I'll tell you a story. When I started my business, and the first year, no overhead, I was 22. I thought I was doing pretty well for myself, you know? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, for a moment in time, I was like, how at 22 am I making the money and have the life almost of what my dad has completed in, at that time, would have been 56 years. How does that happen? You know? And I can simply define that with, if I send you out to go build a house and all you have is a hammer, but then you send me out to go build a house and I have cranes, I have a team, I have the right vessel and the right tools. Yeah. Well, I'm going to build that house 25 times faster, you know? And so my dad was one of the greatest leaders, and especially it was eye-opening to see how many people from his work showed up and had stories about his leadership when he built the team that they were a part of, when he built the sector of the company that they were a part of. And at that time, I really realized that my dad was one of the greatest leaders that I've ever met in person. And he was just simply in the wrong vessel to be recognized properly for it. To him, that was his vessel. He loved what he did. He never worked a day in his life. And to me, I just have a different opportunity to be in potentially a different vessel to get a little bit more recognition. Now, I know it's not about recognition, but where I'm going with this is, you asked me about my last name and what that means to me. And now I have this thought in my head of, okay, well, I'm now not doing this for me, but I'm doing this for my dad. I'm doing this for the last name. I'm doing this for the family, because I want everyone to realize that my dad did fucking everything, dude. And his entire life was built towards being a leader and being a good role model for his people. you know, and I think that's a very honorable thing. And so now my job, just like we talked about previously, my job is to take what he did and amplify it.
I like that.
Right? And if I can do that, or when I do that rather,
Nice.
that is when that will be fucking the greatest day of my life.
Let me ask you this. What I'm hearing summarizes the word legacy instead of last name, just to categorize it in 2 sentences or less. You gotta be smart with your words here. What will your legacy be? What will you be known for when your actions, your body, everything else is gone in the future? What is your legacy? Not your family's, but you specifically.
A leader amongst leaders. And probably honor over everything.
I like that. Known for honor and for leadership. I like that. I think I already know the answer, but in 1 sentence or less, how are you going to earn that legacy?
One day at a time.
Fuck yeah. It's pretty fucking fire. That's pretty fire, dude. I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah, I think like for you, I'm actually genuinely curious. For you, because your parents were actors.
Yep, they bums. Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. So what have you taken from the experiences of your parents, and where do you want to take that? Where do you want to utilize those skills in?
It's a great question. I think the most underappreciated thing in our society is the thing that I was born with, and I'm super grateful for it, is the art of telling a story. I think if you want to be a good storyteller, you better go out and make some pretty damn cool stories. I learned that from both my parents.
And how do you see yourself using that in the future?
I try to think of my life and the people that are in my life as a book, as me writing a book, as in me writing a movie, and there's a little camera crew following you every single day. So if you were to write your own story so far, what would it be like? And where are you at? I think self-recognition in your own life, in your own story, is something that's is misunderstood by people our age specifically. I think people think you have to have it all figured out. But the only constant in life is change. So the sooner you start to recognize that and realize that, the better off you're going to be. The second thing is the sooner you realize that the people you look up to, your parents, your mentors, whoever, are also just kids who grew up, the better off you're going to be. And one other thing from like both my parents, but maybe my mom a little bit more is just really that golden rule is like treat people how you want to be treated. I think in combination with being kind, but also being a little selfish. So like kind, the golden rule is be selfless, but also be selfish in go out there and create some damn stories for yourself. Go out there and tell some damn stories to others. And that includes laughing and loving and living along the way. But to answer your question, the art of storytelling, we live in a generation that sees a new story every half a second. But in all actuality, the real stories are when you look up and recognize you're living your life, not watching your life. I think that's the biggest, to give you a long answer, that's the biggest thing I've learned from my parents, specifically in their careers when they were younger, for sure.
Okay. And how do you plan on utilizing that in the future?
I think of how I want to create my own family. I think of constant laughter at each other in the best way possible, at the bad circumstances. My definition of what that would look like in terms of this storytelling is I have this self-fulfilling prophecy that there will be a day I know I made it. Everyone talks about like why you do it, right? So I have a specific scenario and I'll give it to you right here. Okay? So here's what it would look like. And this is something we could talk about as well. I'll call it my 2060 reality. Okay? I'm sitting at the head of the table at my cottage. Okay? I have my beautiful wife to my left. I have my children on the right side, and I have their lovely families that they've created on the other side. We are sitting, and again, I'm at the head of this table. This is my house, and this is my family that I created, that we've created together, let's say. I'm telling the story about when I was, and every time I say this, I say whatever age I am. I'm telling the story to my family about when I was 25, when I was running a business, I was doing this, and I was doing this. And I'm telling the lesson I learned along the way, and I make a joke out of it, and everyone laughs. And as soon as that laughter's done, we have a beautiful meal. We go outside, enjoy and then I list off the things that I like to do and I want my family like to do. We go outside, enjoy the sunset. We play catch on the beach because it's that close to us. We can dip our feet in the water just as much as we can enjoy the smell of the roses and the taste of the food and all this stuff. So that's my 2030 reality. In that is, I have my family, love. I have my purpose, which is I'm telling the stories about my career and what I did along the way. I have my health because I still think my wife is beautiful. I'm strong enough to be able to go walk, swim if I want to, all this stuff. And I have faith because I had faith that it's going to happen, and it did. So that's the long-winded answer of how am I going to use everything I'm learning now, is because my reality, I know one day when I made it, is that. Long answer for a short question.
What do you believe the power of journaling is? Why do you think that that's so powerful? I know we were talking about journaling previously, but that was just a question that I wanted to ask.
Few things. One is the affirmation side of things. Two is the memory. So I guess I'll go more into those affirmations. I genuinely believe you speak things into existence, good or bad. If you tell yourself you had a shit day, you did have a shit day. Mm-hmm. If you tell yourself you're going to live a good life, then you will live a good life, and you need to make sure you're on top of that. So that's the first side of journaling. The second thing is remembering. I'll phrase it as this. The way I've always learned better is by being able to teach it to someone else. So if I live a story, which is just me living my life, and I write it enough that I can read it back and tell it as a story, that's a story to me. That's living, because I know the moment, I lived every second of it, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. So I think the idea of writing my future and writing my past, so I remember where I came from and know where I'm going, that's why I journal. To give you the deeper answer, we said this off camera, but I'll rephrase it here. I journaled from when I was 15 till now, so 10 years, but I've broken them up into a few different books. So the first one was 15 to 20, and I know I want to have a son one day, and instead of me being the 45-year-old, Dad, I don't care about when you're 15, I want to go party with my friends. Totally fine, kid. On your 15th birthday, I'm going to give him whatever gift he gets, or whatever gift he earned, whatever, and I'm going to give him his dad's book from when he was 15 to 20. Maybe it's better that I give it to him when he's 20, but whatever it is, so he can actually know his father at that age. Not now being the wise, no, at the age. And the same thing will go along the way. So that's the third reason why I journal.
It'd be really cool if your son was to read one day in your life for every day that he lives. Do you understand? So when he's 15,
Cool.
The day that he turns 15, he's reading the first page of your journal. And every day before he goes to bed or when he wakes up, he's reading what you lived that day at that age. I think that would be
cool
fucking
idea.
sick.
It's a very cool idea. It's a lot of writing, but also a lot of introspective thought. I like that. And the only reason why I say that is because every time I think of my grandparents and when I was your age, we walked uphill both ways to school, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
That's the learning through tough times, learning through circumstance. Mm-hmm. But there's also all the little things that go so, I don't know, the unwavering potential that this kid has that you can't bestow upon him because of your age. But again, like I said, if you could have the conversation, if you could go back in time and imagine you being the 25-year-old self, talking with your 25-year-old son, being the same age, you'd have the best conversation ever. So that's why I journal, so you can have those conversations. It's a one-way conversation, but I think an important one.
Do you ever write notes to your future son in the journal?
Yeah. Oh, they're everywhere. I'll show, if we ever do this again, we can go through fucking page for page.
That's amazing.
Also notes to my future self. That's a big one. A lot of, so for example, let's say today I wrote something in blue and it was at a shit day. 3 years later, I'll go back and in red pen, I'll write why it worked out, why that shit day was needed to have a good day in the future. So what I'm saying is that 5 years isn't just write next page, write next page. It's in those 5 years, anything I learned is in that journal. And as soon as, like I said, when I turned 20, it's done to the last page. Done. I'm not reading that again. The only person who will read that is my son. So now I'm on the 20 to 25 and I'm almost done. I only got a few months left.
Wow.
I only have 3 pages left as well. So like that's how I've timed it. When I turn 26, that book will get closed and it will get put with that journal and no one will see it until my son.
How long are these days? Like, obviously, I guess it depends on what happens in a day, but how long typically are you writing for? Are you writing for a page, 2 pages, half a page?
So I won't write every day.
Okay.
But I will make sure to write under any circumstance. Typically when you journal, like everyone thinks of like a diary. Dear diary, today I had a fucking awful day and this happened and this happened and this. Right? Like you're laughing off. Like that's how. Or you write on accomplishment. I hit my business goal. I this. Dude, in all honesty, some of the journal entries, like I have dedicated pages that are meant for, I don't know what the fuck to write today. One of them is like things I don't know. The prompt is there are things I don't know, and it's just fucking, there's barely any page left. One of the prompts is things I want to forget. I'll try to write without looking at anything else on there. There's some deep shit on there that I don't want to read, that no one should read. But again, when you give it to your son, he's going through those same things. Holy shit, this dad that I look up to is my hero. When he was my age, he was also struggling with X, Y, and Z. Some of the things I write about are like a funny story. Like one that I think of a lot is when I turned 21, I went skydiving for the first time. And I wrote a story as if I was trying to be a poet. And the idea of when you arrive, and I can read it verbatim because I read it so often. When you arrive on scene, you don't look on the ground for validity, you look up. I'm telling it as if I'm telling a story, as if I'm
That's cool.
writing the scene in a book or in a movie. So it's a little bit of everything mixed in there to answer your question and just try to be as creative as possible. And it's also my creative outlet, in all honesty.
No, that's fucking sick. Honestly, that's a great fucking idea. Where did you actually originally think about that or hear about that to actually start it?
When I was 15, it was just the idea of going through fucking puberty and being, what the fuck is life and what is it, man? So you just write that stuff. The more recent journal is the Green Lights Journal by Matthew McConaughey. So I read that book, and we can talk a little more about that on camera. We talked about it off. That was genuinely, that was my Bible for a 2-year period.
Wow.
It's still in my backpack. The journal is, but the book was tattered up. It had fucking sticky notes all over it. It looked like a 6th grade math project. You're like, what is this? All over the place. But that was the best book I've ever read because it was the most life-changing book. And the reason why is there's so many actionable things he talks about in a poetic sense, in a literal sense, in a futuristic, figurative sense. I think a lot of his morals also align with what I fuck with, to put it in layman's terms. Yeah. And the journal has blank pages, and then it will throw a curveball at you, like the prompts I talked about. What are the prompt on the one I'm talking about was, sometimes I wrote things down not to remember, but so I could forget. And you read that in a journal and go, damn. And then now I dedicate the whole page to things I want to forget. And there's some great ones too. Like,
so does he have like a journal that you can buy that's set up?
Yeah, man.
Like that? Okay.
So his book, he journaled for 35 years of his life. And the book he made is, he went off to 5 different locations by himself and cried reading these stories. Holy fuck, I don't even remember that. Oh my God, I did go through that. Oh my God, I did achieve that. And he basically wrote his story through not looking back and remembering, but through what he was thinking at the time. That's why I love his book so much. Wow. It's a book about his life throughout and written throughout his life. Mm-hmm. So the journal is basically the prompts along the way and the big things that stand out.
I think another huge thing though for your son when he reads that is your thinking process. Like, what was most important to you at that time? You know, and obviously that will reflect in the writing. So one question that I have is, obviously in the journal, there's going to be some bad shit, right? There's going to be some problematic days. There's going to be problems that you write in there.
For sure.
What actually is, like today, what actually is your thought process to going through a bad experience or a problem arises? What is your SOP for actually dealing with that problem?
It's funny you say this. I look forward to shitty days now because of that. Because through experience of oh my God, this sucks. I'm going to write about it in a negative connotation. And now learning my bad habits, learning what was I doing at the time? Who was I hanging out with? What was I eating? What was I watching? Through like self-reflection, that word, I'll give it to you this way. My journal is my game film. If we'll put it in sports terms. Okay, you want to get better at this part of the game. You would go back and watch your game last time. You dissect it like film, and you'd fucking use it to get better. Practice makes perfect. Blah blah. So my game film of life is this journal. What was I thinking at the time? Who was I with? All this stuff. So now, when a bad thing happens, that's what you were talking about. I can't wait. Like, let's say I had a fucking awful day today. I'd get home. You know, you've had them. You sit down on the couch. You're like deep breath. Damn. And that's a man thing to do. You go, all right, let's get back to it. You have split second. So 100%. In that split second, I allow myself to be in that for 5 minutes. Allow myself to be in that, woe is me, this fucking sucks for 5 minutes. Write it in that mindset. And now when I look back a day later, a month later, 5 years later, you can go, oh, it wasn't really that bad. What I needed to do was this. And I can write it in there, or I can just know for the future. So it's basically my lesson book, if you... to answer it that way.
I see. So when you have a bad day or a major problem arises or something like that, the first step is debriefing in that book.
100%.
Okay.
No thought. Not like, what am I going to think about this in the future? No. It is full of thought, need paper. That's my mindset.
Okay.
Good or bad. Full of thought, need paper.
So how would you write it? In what sense would you write it? Would you write it like, you know what I mean? Today or are you writing it like...
No, man, it's like whatever. I'm not a... January 25th. I don't write like that. Everything in there is a story. I try to be poetic. I try to be artistic, whatever that means. To give you an example, one of the prompts was something about faith and curiosity. And so the first line I wrote was, faith sure is a funny thing. And then I sit back and I go, what does that like mean to me? It's the first thing I thought of when I read the prompt. Faith sure is a funny thing, man. And I'm laughing. I'm like, today was a tough day. Faith. But you know what? Like, I do have faith that things are going to work out. Why? And then even just in letting yourself express yourself in your writing, in talking, in whatever, I think is so important. I don't think people express themselves enough. That's my way of doing it. This sounds like it's your way of doing it. And then the self-reflection part of being comfortable, going back and listening to yourself in a vulnerable state, that's where the growth part comes.
Yeah, I know obviously with good days, with bad days, right? Especially with bad days, is sometimes you have this like voice in your head, right? That's like, man, you know, are you really going to do this? And so when those days creep up, because in my personal opinion, I'm not going to sit on here and say, you know what I mean? I've never had a bad day, or I've never doubted myself in any situation. But when those days arise, I feel like, because to believe in something, you must have a degree of faith.
Absolutely.
Right? But to be convicted of something is something that under any circumstance, no matter what happens, you believe X. Right? And so to you, do you have any self-beliefs? Like maybe it's that self-prophecy. Do you have any self-beliefs versus self-conviction? Meaning any day of the week, does not matter what happens to you, you know.
Yeah, I like that. There's a quote, I think it's from Mosey. I've heard him say it. You don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You gain confidence by stacking undeniable proof that you are who the fuck you say you are. He doesn't say fuck, but it sounds better like that.
Yeah, that's
right?
classic.
That's where my convictions come from.
I see.
So when I have bad days, for me at least now, typically it's when new challenges I haven't faced arrive. So those are the bad days that are in the journal, is because I'm still learning, and I'm okay that I'm still learning. Now, I personally don't have bad days when something I've faced before comes up again. And that's just because of learning lessons, and I think it's more skill development.
Okay.
I think handling stress is a skill.
100%.
Especially as business owners. But then there's so many skills you learn along the way. So to answer your question, the bad days I have now typically are when I don't feel like I'm equipped to handle a situation. So that's when the writing starts, in the bad sense. So then, to use the Hermosi quote, I can't shout affirmations. I can handle this. I can handle this. I can handle this, because I don't think I can properly or adequately right now. Through the writing process, self-actualization, self-development, then you get I've stacked enough undeniable proof that I am who the fuck I say I am because of my self-development process, which includes being okay being a beginner to become an expert. We talked about that. Using my journal as my game tape to get better. One thing we haven't talked about is relying on my circle, people I trust, their opinions, their perspective on me, what they believe is the truth.
For sure.
And then the last one, which we have talked about, is, like you said, faith. Faith that no matter what, either this is going to work out, this too shall pass, or if it doesn't, then this is happening for a reason. I need to go through it. I think that's what the last 5 years have taught me.
So talking about faith, because the way that I conceptualize faith, belief, and conviction is exactly in that order. When you start out anything, at first you have to have faith in it. The secondly is that faith transitions into a belief. And once that belief becomes powerful enough, it becomes basically who you are, and you're now convicted that this is true, right? So
Say those again. Sorry, what's the order?
faith, belief, conviction.
I hope it does.
Yeah, basically.
Faith. Okay, I like that. I'm gonna remember that.
So this is a question that I like to ask people, especially people that are doing some cool shit, right? So you're how old were you at Channers?
Started there when I was probably 15 or 16.
So 15-year-old you. How do you start to develop the faith? Because I agree with what you just said, but I want to take myself back to when there was no proof. You had nothing. What was your mindset in actually starting to believe or have faith in something that there's a chance that this could work?
I think you need to widen your perspective on things. There's a quote about, I'm not going to remember this. It's something along the lines of, if a bird lived its whole life in a cage, he'll think the birds outside are crazy because they're flying. So at a young age, consume as much information from as many sources in a positive way as you can. In a very literal sense, I was very lucky growing up, and a lot of people might think this is unlucky, traveling so much and not having a home base. But no, I am the luckiest person in the world that I got to experience so much in life, so many people, so many circumstances, financially, all the stuff, that my horizon was so vast. I could do anything. And my mother instilled it in me, brother, son, you can do anything you put your mind to. Not in like the thanks mom, but like literally. If I wanted to be the fucking NBA champion, she fucking believed that I could, and I probably did too. I'm a 5'10" white dude who can't jump more than fucking 10 inches. I'm probably not gonna be good at basketball. But I believed it because my horizon was wide enough. I saw how to do it, and right, that's a shitty example. But to answer your question, broaden your horizon so that you're not stuck in your ways or the ways you were taught. It's number one. And then number two, you talk about the second part is conviction. I think you need to stack up some small wins for yourself along the way. So for example, let's say you have a goal that's, I want to be successful in business financially. You need to have some things you've been successful at to gain the confidence. Sometimes, like for us, that would have been like sports, to be a good athlete. It would have been the belief in you to say, I think I'm gonna go to the military, and then doing it. It would have been for you maybe like finishing that ruck where you're like, I don't think I can do this, and then finishing it. The small wins in life plus a broad horizon at 15, 16, dude, even now 25, some people start their first business venture at 40. Fuck, at 40, like no matter, I think broadening your horizon and stacking up small wins, that's how to do it.
Because I think I agree with most of that, but I believe that you actually must have faith in someone that you trust before you can have faith in yourself. And so what I mean by that is I had faith that it was possible through others before I actually believed I could do it.
Got it.
I needed to listen to those podcasts. I needed to read those books, which goes back to what you said about gaining knowledge, broadening your horizon.
Yeah.
But I believed that this guy has done this and somehow he did that. So I must, even though I don't have anything to prove for it, I must be able to do something close. You know? And then I believe that with a mixture of those small wins, is how you start that ignition, right? How you start that fire. Because I had to believe that it was possible through someone else before I found that it was possible through me.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think you found more of that from close sources or external sources? Whatever that is, from those in your circle at the time or going outside your circle to broaden your horizon?
I think in my personal life, I would say external sources, because I had, not that I didn't look up to everybody close to me, but I didn't see myself living the life that the people around me were living.
Got it.
I thought that I was made for something more than what I was experiencing at that time. You know? And so my dad, for example, we'll use him. He absolutely loved what he did. I could not picture myself doing what my dad did. You know?
Can I interrupt you on that?
For sure.
What was the first, you said your dad loved what?
He loved what he did.
Okay. Do you love what you do?
Of course.
So then aren't you doing the same thing your dad did?
Yes. I guess in terms of leadership, in terms of
that's
building
my
a team.
mindset on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because comparison's a thief of joy. In terms of what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled, there's so many different, and this comes back to the whole fisherman banker, that or whatever. If you feel fulfilled, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. Mm-hmm. I think everyone gets a sense of fulfillment from different things. Also, too, like along the way, you can lose a little bit of that spark because your fulfillment came from maybe having kids or it came from whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So let me ask you that. Do you think your sense of fulfillment will be the same now as it is in X amount of years in the future? Do you think you'll always have that same North Star?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
I like that.
I do.
What is the North Star? I asked you this earlier. What is the why? You mentioned providing. Is that?
Providing. Okay. By far. And I actually think it will be amplified when I have kids of my own.
More relying on
right?
you to, yeah.
And I think it will actually be like 10, 20, 30x when you actually realize that, holy shit, like I created this child and this child is solely relying on me and my wife, right? And so she knows what her roles are. I know what my roles are. So I got to go do my job. I got to go fulfill. So yeah, I think going back to that faith thing real quick, I think that in terms of actually business, I didn't really have anybody to look up to. Business strictly. So when I say that I needed to believe in someone else, I needed to see that it was possible through someone else, because I know, like my dad definitely from the beginning, like if this guy can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, you can do it, right? And so and that belief was instilled in me from a very young age. Was he bleeds the same blood as me? Well, he's no better, and I'm no worse. You know. So I think that I needed to see someone else build a crazy empire, something that I wanted to build, right? Because all I knew at that time was like a classic corporate fucking look, right? And that's not what I wanted. So when I found Andy Frisella's podcast and I started listening to how his culture was, how his people behaved, right? What it was like working for him, it was like, I want that. And that he built it, I can build it.
Nice.
You know?
Let's talk about that. I feel like that's the tribe atmosphere. You come from a tribe. In life, people either tend to stick with it or maybe they outgrow it a little bit. Sounds like that's what you're talking about. Now you're in the phase of life. I think the starting point, I think we're both in the same phase of, okay, I'm building my tribe now. What are the 3 core competencies that are your tribe? What are the 3 things? It's like, if I had to categorize it,
I would say persistence.
Okay.
I would say honor. I could probably list off another 10, but
that's all right. That's why I say 3, man. You got to be persistence, honor, and
teamwork.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from what you said before, if I had to go further in depth in that, is one, honor the sacrifices others have made for you. That's what I'm hearing a lot. Teamwork, because you can do more together than you can alone.
For sure.
And the first one was persistence.
Persistence.
Because persistence together is the only way to achieve a goal.
Everyone has to be persistent.
I like that.
And I'm the type of person too where I love pushing people because I like being pushed.
That's how you want to be treated. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, right? So I like finding my limits in every fucking crevice of the earth. I like learning my limits because that limit, see, this is the cool thing about limits, right? Is if you just look at the word limit, right? It goes back to your perspective. Do you believe that that's your limit? Do you believe that you can push yourself harder? Right? Like, I'm going to use the classic example, right? Where it's like, I need to sleep for 8 hours minimum, right? Well, is that true? Or is that a limit that you're placing on yourself?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, perfect example, right? I had to do BMQ land, basic military qualifications land. And in that, we had to stay awake for 4 days straight.
That's a standard procedure?
That's, yeah, you're literally, you dig out a trench and you live in the trench for 4 days.
Interesting. Holy shit.
Right?
That's awesome.
So if you came to me at 16 instead of 17 and you were like, hey, you think you could stay awake for 4 days? I'd say, fuck no. No chance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you asked me, maybe, what's your limit with that? I don't know. I could probably stay awake for like a day, 2 days, you know? But when you have somebody external pushing you and pushing you and pushing you and pushing you, you have to find your real limits. The limits where not that you say you're done, your body and your mind say you're done.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to consciously make that decision.
So here's something I just thought of, and I'd never thought of this before. Do you think it's more important than to push yourself to the limits to reach your potential, or to surround yourself in the environment with people who push you to your limits to reach your potential? What do you think is more important?
Surround yourself with the people all day long. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe this, even for myself, other people will push you farther than yourself every single time.
So basically, by creating your tribe, the only way you can do it, what I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing from you at least, and I agree with this wholeheartedly. One, you got to be undeniably and unapologetically yourself, because then you will find and resonate with people around you. Mm. And once you've done that, those people will push you to be more unapologetically yourself, to become and reach your full potential.
100%.
Have you heard of the Goggins whiteboard test?
I haven't heard of the test, no.
Oh, dude. Do you mind if I talk about that?
100%.
So I just got back a couple months ago. I went to see Andy Elliott and David Goggins in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Okay. Goggins is a badass in person too. First of all, he walks on stage right away, and we're in a church, a big, like a huge forum, but there's a cross at the back. And he's swearing right away. He's ripped. He's right, David Goggins. And he goes, he's this close. And he goes, I know we're in a church right now. And I'm staring at a cross. And he looks like this, and he basically takes the time to look at almost everyone in the audience. He goes, but God knows exactly who the fuck he made. So if any of you have a problem with my tone, fuck you too. And then he sits down and starts to like his TED talk, whatever.
That's amazing.
Holy fuck. So fast forward the whiteboard test. Right away, I was like, I'm bought in. This guy's a different breed, right? He goes, every man, every woman, every person has a whiteboard test. And it's the concept of potential, right? And so he goes, when I was 300 pounds, when I was fat, and these are all his words, when I was a piece of shit, he's beating himself up. He's using those kind of words. And I showed up, you know, I walked up. In fact, I needed a rail. Like, I hobbled up those steps to heaven. And I got there, and I waited my fucking time, waited in line as the other individuals got to speak to God right before they got into heaven. He goes, God sat me down. And he's sitting in a beautifully crafted chair, but it was fantastic. And I'm standing there, a little out of breath. Those stairs were a lot. And he's got a whiteboard. And on that whiteboard, it says David Goggins, ultra marathon runner, baddest motherfucker alive. And he starts to list off all this stuff, right? And at the time, he's talking about me being the 300-pound person that he regarded. He goes, whoa, God, I think you have the wrong person. He goes, no, David, this is what we had written for you. You just didn't fulfill your potential. And then he stops and he just pauses and he holds it. He puts the mic down like this. And again, just like he did earlier, he looks at every single person in there. And then he says this. He goes, let's just say there's 100 of you in the crowd right now. 90 of you are just fucking targets. 9 of you, you're soldiers. You're going to go out there and fight. 1 of you is a fucking warrior. I know I'm a warrior, so that math doesn't fucking add up. I don't know where my warriors are here, but you'll know. We'll know. And then he goes, because you know what actually is going to happen now that I'm going to reach my potential? Not only did I get to heaven, I fucking ran there barefoot. I'll run as many ultra marathons as it fucking takes to get to heaven. I skipped the fucking line. I fucking crawled my way up to heaven. And when I got there, I sat down. I didn't even look at the whiteboard. I said, God, where the fuck's my ticket? I've earned my way in here. I don't need to know my potential. I earned it. I hit everything I said I was going to do. In fact, I bet you there's some shit on there that you didn't even know I was going to do because I didn't know I could do it either. That's fucking potential. Fuck you. Where's my ticket? And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, damn. Now the profanity, like he's intense, right?
Oh, he's super intense.
But that simple, like, metaphor, that logic of potential and what are you going to do? Like, I was like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, see that I am 100% I agree with.
Oh, yeah.
Because I truly believe, man, like there's no one that's going to show you your limits other than the people that care about you most. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's so fucking important to surround yourself with people that are willing to push you to your limits, right? Mm-hmm. And I talked about this a little bit previously, but when you have somebody in your life that's actually willing to call you out for shit, that's a very important person. Mm-hmm. You might think that they're a dick. You might think that they're being an asshole. That's probably one of the most important people in your life at that point.
100%. There's a phrase that I remember reading. It might even been in Can't Hurt Me to Go. I don't remember where I learned it, but I'll say it to you. I'll say it to the camera. There is no one coming to save you. There is no one coming to save you. I remember hearing that and genuinely being like, oh, whatever time. And then recognizing as a man, you get a certain point, bro, there's no one coming to fucking save you.
No.
So you better figure out who you want to spend your time with, because that's everything we just talked about. You better figure out what you want to do and why you want to do it. And tomorrow when you wake up, you better start. Again, there is no one coming to fucking save you. I remember saying that to myself in the mirror going like, damn, tomorrow, there's still no one coming. The next day, still no one coming. The only person that's coming is you. The only person you got to sleep with every night is you. The only person you got to wake up to every morning is you. Who are you going to show up for yourself? Who are you going to be for yourself? And then when you do that, that's when you can be the best people for others. That's when you can realistically talked about surrounding yourself with good people, giving you good advice. When you do that for yourself, then you can do it for others. Because if I give you all this fucking advice, but I'm not doing it, I'm just a hypocrite.
For sure.
I'm just some has-been or never was. But if I'm doing it and I tell you it as, hey, here's what I do, try it, versus I think you should do this, it's very different advice.
For sure.
One's advice and one's, hey, I learned this lesson the hard way, try this. I think that's the most important thing any man can learn.
That is 100%. And that's absolutely so true. Like no one's going to be here to hold your hand.
Yeah.
Not a single person.
And it's your responsibility to at least find the people you want to spend time with, because at least they'll try to help, try to reveal some of that potential, try to hold you accountable.
100%.
But you also have to do that for yourself and for others. For
sure. All right, I want to ask you a good and outro question here.
Okay. Let's do it.
So, if there is some 15-year-old kid out there watching this right now.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can remember back to when you were 15 and he just getting his life started, just starting to get on the right path, right? If you could spend 30 seconds and speak to that kid, what would you say to him?
15?
15.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Let me think on this for a second. That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. All right, ready? I'm going to talk to this 15-year-old.
Yeah, let's do it.
I got 3 things for you, kid. Number 1 is that you are exactly where you need to be, and you are exactly who you need to be successful. Number 2, honor the sacrifices others have made for you. I'm assuming it's probably going to be your parents or your loved ones, whoever that is. They have given you the world because you are their world, and one day you will mean more than that, and you will achieve more than that. Recognize where you're at right now is not where you're always going to be, in a good way or a bad way. If you think life's good right now, it is. So make sure you work just as hard to maintain that. If life isn't good right now, you can get yourself out of any circumstance you put yourself in or you're placed in. Number 3, if you're 15, it's okay to be 15. It's okay to fuck up. It's okay to date the girl. It's okay to, but you have to do it. Don't get stuck in a fallacy of, oh, I wish, I thought, maybe. No. Do it. Fuck up and learn from your mistakes. The only difference between a mistake, a failure, and a lesson is what you took from it. And here's the last 5 seconds. If you cross the same tree twice in the forest, you are lost. Take that as you will.
Fire, dude. Fire. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
They're fucking
amazing.
Fire. It's great.